Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm, and you were watching first part of What If Naruto was saved by Dr. Octopus during Chunin exams. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And for more exclusive and spicy content, follow me on Patreon. Link is in the description below. Now, wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Hi there, I'm Naruto Uzumaki. For some reason, the village of Konoha was attacked by the Kyuubi no Kitsune 13 years ago. The fourth Hokage sacrificed his life to transform that nine-tailed fox demon into a baby not long after it first appeared. I was that baby. I don't know why, but I will at the very least punch that bastard in the face if I ever see him. The village was informed of the Kyuubi's defeat by the third Hokage a few hours after the sealing. They started to hate me a few seconds later. After 12 long, glare-filled years during which the villagers cursed under their breath, I eventually became a ninja, even though it took 3 attempts, being duped by Mizuki into taking the sacred scroll of sealing, mastering the A-ranked Kage Bushin no Jutsu technique, and beating the living daylights out of Mizuki. I'm a ninja at the end of the day. For the next 9 months, my team would follow a fairly standard schedule. Sakura, Sasuke, and I would get to the training ground at around 7 a.m. and wait for Kakashi to arrive. 3 hours later, he would arrive and make some pathetic excuse for his tardiness, which was followed by a couple of hours of D-rank missions, i.e., let's do somebody's chores for them, lunch, and then training, i.e., Naruto, do some chakra control exercises. Sasuke, let's do some taijutsu training. Sakura, fond of Sasuke and praise him for just breathing correctly, before we went home and started over the following day. A different day, the same shit. It has been an interesting mission. I lost the first person I probably could have called a friend, rest in peace. Haku. Witnessed a missing nin kill a cunning business midget, saved Wave Country, and, somewhere between the team's formation and now, finished roughly a billion forgettable D-rank missions. Really, is it that difficult to paint a fence or rake leaves? The Chunin exam follows. First, demonstrate the essential ninja skill of taking a test. Next, we had a time survival test under the watchful eye of an exhibitionist ninja. I can't blame her, though. It would be a shame to hide a body like that. Fight a Sanin. Witness my teammate get a tattoo and then be knocked out by a punch to the gut. Survive the battle. Wake up in time to see Sasuke's tattoo spread and turn him into a madness. Along the way, kick Kiba's ass, and then swear to defeat Neji for Hinata on my Nindo. I asked Kakashi to teach me how to fight Neji more than 2 weeks ago, but he pawned me off to Konohamaru's trainer, Ebisu. A few hours later, Jiraiya, who, after some convincing, became my new sensei, hands Ebisu his ass. Jiraiya attempted to teach me how to call forth toads for the next 2 weeks. The word, tried, is crucial to summarize his training method. I used the summoning technique exactly as he instructed. The only time he did so, and when a tadpole or small toad appears, he insults me and tells me to repeat the process, rinse, and repeat. That's it. No support, no words of encouragement, no clues. He doesn't even give me a glance until the toad appears. Even though he is an excellent ninja, he is just as awful as Kakashi as a teacher. Why am I telling you all of this, anyway? After forcing me to run out of chakra with his foolish toad summoning, Jiraiya threw me off a cliff 15 seconds ago to see if he would continue training me. A flashback after Jiraiya dropped me on my face and I made summon attempt 37,192. A frog with a tadpole tail without the fin part and red comma things on the back. If you care, I was able to regain consciousness. The toad sage actually looked serious for once when I stumbled to my feet and faced him. Then he pokes me in the forehead with a finger, sending me flying out of the woods and off the edge of this cliff with sharp rocks jutting off the sides. The training ends today, he said in his rough voice. If you don't want to die, figure it out yourself. Finish the flashback. What sort of instruction is this? Is he attempting to murder me? Oh my god. That bastard is really trying to kill me. Hold on a second. Oh, that's it. I will never allow this toad bastard to defeat me if Orochimaru didn't kill me. Hold on. There's a ledge rapidly approaching below me. Perhaps I can stay on it if I direct my chakra toward my arms and legs. 30 feet, 20 feet, 10, 5, 1, you get it. Crack. I didn't understand. I swung a little before the crack occurred and I lost my hold because my palm struck the ledge directly. I believe the bone in my right arm is broken. Oh, please. I hope it's not bone. Alright, don't freak out. You're just going to die from a broken arm. I take a moment to focus by closing my eyes. Drip, and when I reopen them, I discover that I've been transported to a sewer somewhere. This is a perfectly normal occurrence, isn't it? Before I can concentrate on where I am and how I got here, a deep growl reverberates through the tunnels, seemingly urging me to locate it, and I have to. I meander up and down the sewer's numerous tunnels until, at last, I come to a cage door that is secured shut by a piece of paper bearing the word seal, as well as a frowning mouth full of teeth and a pair of glowing red eyes. The eyes ask, "Why are you here, human?" I respond, "Who, what are you?" The voice mockingly responds, "I'm Hurt Human. We've been together your entire life and you don't recognize me?" Kyuubi, I acknowledge aloud, "All right, if you're inside my body then you need to pay me rent, so how about giving me some of your chakra to get us out of this mess?" "Prisoners don't pay rent," the Kyuubi mockingly retorted. "Listen Fox, if I don't get out of this mess then I'll die, and if I die," Kyuubi concluded, "then I'll die," as its stern gaze softened into one of acceptance out of all the possible answers. I wasn't prepared for the demon fox to say, "No thanks, unlike you I'm ready to die." "You want to die?" "Yes," said the Kyuubi plainly. "Why? I am far older than you can even comprehend, human. I have seen far too many friends and family members die. Demonkind has been on the decline for the past few millennia," the Kyuubi said with solemnity. As if recalling the past, the beast behind those eyes paused and said, "They've been killed by each other for land or food, assassinated by your kind because they exist and look different than you, or just disappeared. Hell, I haven't seen a kitsune in over a century, so I'm probably the last of them, and there's no way in hell that I'm going to be the last of the kitsune and the last of the demons. This is why I allowed myself to be sealed, so that when my host died, I could be reunited with my kin." I roared back, "What about me? I'm not ready to die. What did I do to deserve this fate?" The Kyuubi said, "Perhaps a member of your family sinned against Kami. I neither know nor care why we were brought together. Now if you'll excuse me, I'd like to spend our last moments of life preparing for our death." When I opened my eyes, prepared to battle the red thing, I discovered that I was back where I had begun, falling to my demise. Expletive deleted. All right, keep thinking, keep thinking, keep thinking. What skills do I possess that could help me escape this situation? No ramen here, but ramen eating that's out. Henge, I'd still weigh the same and fall nothing to trade places with. Kawaii. Then there's Kage Bushin. Using my left arm to grab my right, I move it into position to say the name of my best jutsu. Hopefully, this works. I yell, "Kage Bushin no Jutsu," and throw as much chakra into the move as I can manage. A burst of smoke envelops me, revealing 6 clones of myself within arm's reach. Sorry to do this guys, but I need something to break my fall. Without saying a word, my copies move beneath me by grabbing onto each other and pointing their bodies straight down to accelerate. Eventually, they form a 2-clone thick layer wall to cling to, which would hit the ground first. I mumble, "Thank you," as the first layer touches the earth. Doesn't it seem funny? I'm referring to expressing gratitude to yourself for defending yourself. However, their memory differs from mine by a few seconds, so why not show civility? An unexpected reaction results from the first layer of clones dispelling instantly upon contact with the uneven ground. The second layer of clones moved, albeit only slightly, before they also struck the ground and dispelled, since they didn't dispel all at once. This ultimately leads to me landing on my already fractured arm and breaking additional bones throughout my body in some way. I'm not sure why, but things are a little disorganized and disjointed. If the clone above me had given me that look, I must have cracked my skull. But wait, I was on top of the pile, so how can I remember? Well, I remember what my clone remembers. I have to say aloud, "Great," to make sure I'm still able to speak. I learn a cool side effects of my jutsu and it's helping me remember being in even more pain. My already pounding head finally feels the rush of memories from all my crushed clones, and I pass out from the agony. However, I could swear that metal ropes were touching me, so I must have been awake enough to have this hallucination. I'm not sure how long it's been since I blacked out, but I do know that you've most likely been captured if you wake up immobilized from restraints until you can determine where you were, who was around you, whether they were friends or enemies, and potential escape routes. Standard procedure requires you to show no signs of consciousness. Standard procedure didn't appeal to me. Whoever the hell is out there, let me out of this thing. I yelled, except for a light directly above my head, which only lit a small portion of the room. The room I was in was extremely dark. This only served to highlight how strangely metal everything around me was constructed. We remained silent for a few moments before I closed my eyes once more to assess the extent of the harm. The sound of 2 sets of footsteps approaching me, just before 2 men entered the light, snapped me out of my self-evaluation. The first man was rather unremarkable, dressed only in gray slacks and a light green polo shirt. His brown hair was cut in a flat top style, which was the only real deviation from the average appearance of his face. In contrast, his associate's appearance was anything but ordinary. The second man had on a green bodysuit, yellow boots, gloves, a chest plate, and a belt. A dark pair of laboratory goggles in the shape of sunglasses covered his eyes, and a bowl cut was applied to his brown hair. However, The man's 4 tentacle-like arms that protruded from his back were the most striking feature. With a slight accent that made the letter W sound more like a V, the second man asked, "Are we awake?" "We're not sure, do we have metal arms in our back?" "We do." "Then we're awake, but we're very puzzled." "Considering the circumstances, I'm not surprised," said the first man. "But where are our manners? Allow me to introduce myself. I am Alistair Smythe." The second man said, "And I am Dr. Otto Octavius, or, more crassly, Dr. Octopus." I had to ask aloud, "Why would they call you Dr. Octopus? You only have 6 arms as far as I can tell, unless there's something different about your legs." One of my former enemies thought that combining my name with the tentacles would make a humorous jibe, and the name stuck, replied Dr. Octavius. "Not exactly the cleverest man, was he?" I responded. "Alistair, as fascinating as this train of thought is, cut in. We have far more pressing concerns." "Yes," said Dr. Octavius. "First of all, I don't believe we caught your name." "Naruto Uzumaki," was my response. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Uzumaki," added Dr. Octavius. "We must admit we were not expecting somebody to come crashing down upon our base and surviving the impact. You can blame the pervert that pushed me off the cliff and the damn fox that wants to die." "Fox?" inquired Alistair. "And why exactly would anybody wish to kill a child?" I told the usual pair my backstory, not knowing how they would respond, but by the end, these 2 men were visibly enraged by what I had done to deserve them. "If only I could escape this mailbox, I would show them such pain for harming a mere child," roared Octavius. Alistair remarked, "And to think we're the ones called supervillains. If that annoying wall-crawler were here, I think even he'd want to harm the citizens, Mr. Uzumaki." "Call me Naruto," I answered. "Mr. Uzumaki sounds odd." The robotics master turned to face his counterpart and gave him a long look before saying, "Very well, Naruto, you may call me Alistair if you'd like." "Okay." Octavius muttered in irritation, "He can call me Otto, but you're telling him what's happening." I said, "What is happening? I'm strapped to, whatever I'm strapped to, I can't feel much, and I think I'm supposed to be dead." Alistair replied, "I think that this Kyuubi was it is unintentionally keeping you alive. When Otto found you, you were badly wounded and on the verge of death. Truthfully, you did die for a few moments while we were trying to heal you." "What?" I yelled. "I died, but how?" "Shouldn't calm yourself," says Otto. "There is no use as struggling with it at this moment. Alistair and I were able to revive you when your heart stopped. It was a fairly common medical procedure from our world." Alistair attempted to explain, but an awkward silence fell over the room. "While your body has sustained a considerable amount of damage, we have managed to bring you back to consciousness with our machinery, but we have reached a, how do I phrase this?" Alistair said. "Mein Gott, fine, I'll explain. We've never had a live specimen in our lab before, somebody who could help us understand what is causing this world to be so fundamentally different from our own. You see, in our world, relatively few individuals have any sort of special ability, perhaps less than 1%, yet Here, said Alistair, it's as if over half of your world's population is ninja as you've explained it, and somehow it's interfering with our technology. Perhaps this chakra, or even the Biju's chakra as you've explained it," Otto replied, "is the reason why our ship, and indeed we cannot move beyond the floor of this chasm." "What do you mean, you can't move?" I responded. Alistair let out a sigh after the 2 men exchanged a brief glance. "We are connected to the ship," Alistair clarified, "because we are not biological beings like yourself." "What?" Otto clarified, "We are projections of light or holograms. We only appear due to technology created by our late associate Quentin Beck, also known as Mysterio. An unusual, yet dedicated man," Alistair continued. "He died before his time. Regardless, Alistair and I began this project to act as a time capsule of sorts." "If you guys are holograms," I started, the foreign term sounding strange to me, "how did you bring me in here?" I asked. "We built a few small machines that are able to patrol the valley floor without being rendered inoperable," Alistair clarified. "Okay, so tell me more about this time capsule." Otto clarified, "Our world was changing, getting smaller. Alistair and I were abducted and transported to a strange world with the lizard, Dr. Doom, and the Red Skull by some entity called the Beander. I don't know who any of those names are. They were respectively a lizard monster, the ruler of a land that we didn't live in, a villain from our planet's Second World War, and I don't know what the Beander was either." Alistair clarified, "We were on the world for a year. Skull, Otto, and Doom carved out territory to rule, and I found myself working for the Red Skull." Otto spat out, "Until that blasted Doom took over my Octavia," with a furious tone. Alistair still ignored Octavia's former leader. "Somehow 1 year later, Spider-Man appeared on that world along with other heroes from our world and converted the lizard to his side, Alistair said. We don't know how, but we were both transported back to Earth a week or so after Spider-Man arrival and found that no time had passed on the Earth. However, the web-slinger didn't return. Or perhaps he did, but we were launched before he did, Otto responded. So you guys are holograms of two supervillains, who created a machine to hold a copy of your minds, so you could launch it into space? Why? Without the web-slinger, we thought that we could run rampant and take over New York, Alistair said. Adding, we were wrong, Otto said. Other heroes showed up to pick up the slack, some less honorable than others. Iron Man, War Machine, Daredevil, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, even Doctor Strange made the occasional appearance, Alistair went on. That lunatic the Punisher practically moved to New York to fight us in Spider-Man place. I think he was one of the key reasons we built the machine. His single-mindedness would have had him hunting us until the end of time. Said Otto. We decided that with so many heroes, the odds of us going on to have children or even heirs to our legacies were practically non-existent. Scorpion was pretty close, said Alistair. Otto exclaimed incredulously. Mac Gargan, that irradiated, idle-minded, imbecile. Just what our world needed. Moronic children that both spit acid and glow in the dark. Besides, he couldn't get laid if he was an egg inside of a chicken. You never saw his girlfriend. They were very close. Guys? I cut in. Not that I mind listening to gossip sessions about people I don't know, but can we get back to the story? Right, Alistair said with a hint of shame. Otto and I managed to gather all of our fellow villains together and explained our plan and reasoning. While they did not believe us about the secret war on another world, Otto said. In a mocking tone, I added, because it sounds so believable. Otto did not pay attention to my remarks and kept going. They did agree with the necessity of finding a way to preserve their legacy, and so we copied the technology of all of our associates along with various technologies from our world and loaded their schematics into our ship before launching it into space. Alistair clarified, we hoped for at least one of two results to occur. We hoped to either find Spider-Man to destroy him once and for all, or to find a worthy successor to all we had accomplished. Where do I fit into all of this? I inquired. Perhaps we could help each other, Naruto, said Otto. We have the technology to be a powerful force in the world. However, we lack a way to exist outside of this chasm. You, on the other hand, said Alistair, have been neglected and ill-educated by those who reside in your village. If you agreed to participate in a procedure to have the powers and abilities that we possess incorporated into yourself, you could become a powerful fighter. And we, said Otto, could study yourself in this world to determine the best way for our machinery to work, as well as having a worthy heir to our legacies. After giving it some thought, I said, are you sure you want me? Your machinery is very complicated looking, and I wasn't known as the Dobie of my class because of my blonde hair. Dobie? Inquired the two men. Idiot, I said, genuinely embarrassed. It wasn't my fault. I know I understood everything they said, but they keep changing the questions just when I think I understand the answers. Hey, that sounds pretty good. I wonder if anyone uses it as a catchphrase. It's easy to make up for your lack of intelligence, Otto said. One of my previous inventions was the neuro-neutralizer ray, which I used to temporarily turn Spider-Man into my accomplice. Since that day, I continued to work on the device and eventually came up with additional modes. The first was a neuroduplication ray, which I used to scan all of the minds associated with the technology we placed on board within our computer. Not only lie the minds of both Alistair Smythe and myself, but also the minds of the Vulture, Shocker, and many others. Sounds crowded, I said in jest. Like you wouldn't believe, said Alistair. Rhino's duplicate would not stop making knock-knock jokes. Since I hadn't heard one in a while, I asked, such as? Otto went on, interrupting Alistair and me before we could begin making knock-knock jokes. I then continued to improve the device and turned it into a neuro-augmentation ray, which will allow us to add memories rather than suppress or duplicate them. With some adjustments, we could use it to transfer portions of our scientific knowledge and how our weapons work into you, so that you could become this world's finest scientific mind in a matter of hours. Wouldn't that be taking the easy way out of learning? I respond. Not really, said Alistair. Anyone can learn facts. It is applying them that is the true test of knowledge. You would only receive the facts and can repeat them, but learning the applications will be entirely up to you. My thoughts whirled through every option until, at last, I could think of just one. I'll do it. Excellent, said Alistair. While Otto begins the transfer of knowledge, I shall begin inserting the clusters of nanites that will assist you in the control of your implants. Nanites? Implants? Clusters? I don't think I know what any of those things mean. I said yes, I understand what you're thinking. Does he understand what exhibitionist means, but not cluster? You would be shocked at the words that are used in everyday speech here, given the number of perverts in Konoha. Nanites are tiny cell-sized machines that we have managed to make operational in this environment. Implants are. I don't want breasts, I yelled. The two men simply paused and gazed at me for a while before Otto unexpectedly burst out laughing. Isn't that what women put into their chests? I responded. Muttered, wrong kind of implants, Alistair said. The implants we're talking about are like Otto's extra arms. Oh, I replied. Well, I feel stupid. Do not feel ashamed, Otto reprimanded. There is nothing wrong with being ignorant of the world. It is only wrong if you do not try to understand what you do not know on some level. Okay then, I said. Start with Nero activating thing. I was so excited that I could tell Otto was a little irritated that I had given his ray the incorrect name, but he still grinned. A metal headband encircled my head and clamped down firmly on it, but neither man spoke. Alistair said, this may hurt a bit, as a screen appeared on my side that showed an empty bar. We've got a lot to download and we can only hope your system doesn't crash again. I screamed in agony before I could ask what he was talking about because it felt like 1,000 nails were driven through my skull at once. Sorry, Otto said, but direct neural stimulation produces the best results. A blinding flash of white light exploded my world, and then I was inundated with faces, numbers, and facts. The length of the hypotenuse is derived from the square root of the sum of the squares of the other two sides. Acceleration due to gravity is 98 meters per second squared. Increasing the speed of a fluid decreases its pressure. The air moving over a wing is faster and therefore has less pressure than the air underneath, which leads to lift. I blacked out after seeing a gray-haired man smile down at me before he lifted me up and gave me a hug while saying, my son, I love you so much, you will do many great things. It's not enjoyable to black out around you. The world vanishes, then abruptly resumes without any prior notice or justification. Naruto? Naruto? Are you awake? I heard someone ask, and I'm Naruto, who's right? I just had a lot of information crammed into my brain and I was speaking to Alistair at the time. They must have moved the table to a horizontal plane because when I opened my eyes, I saw Alistair and Otto staring down at me. I have indeed regained consciousness. It feels as if my cranial plate has been buffeted by an unnecessarily numerous quantity of pachyderm. However, my synaptic pathways appear to be functioning at an increased velocity relative to my status prior to your augmentation. I took a moment to process what I had said. What did I just say? Alistair translated. Your brain is functioning better than before, but your head hurts. It will take a little while longer for all the information to be processed. I said, who was the gentleman? What gentleman? Returned Otto's question. The gray-haired man who hugged me and told me he loved me, I replied. That was my father, Spencer Smythe, Alistair acknowledged. I thought that perhaps a few additional memories of being loved would be beneficial to you. You always were the most sentimental of our group, Otto said with a sly smile. I said, is that a bad thing? As long as sentimentality does not prevent you from doing what must be done. No, it is not, said Otto. My head began to pound once more before we could carry on the conversation. How long was I out? A few hours, said Alistair. While the accumulation of information was a success, I'm sorry to say the nanites are having a difficult time accumulating in your body. For some reason your chakra changes consistency around the nanites and attacks them. Must be the furball, I concluded. It seems so intent on dying that it will refuse me any chance of living if it can. Otto growled. Why should the beast have any say? It is a monster that was placed inside of you by another monster. You are its controller. Therefore, it should serve you. If it will not give you its power, then you must take it. I agree, said Alistair. If you could harness the demon's power, then potentially our technology could be powered by the beast's energy and thereby granting you greater control. I asked, so you think I should go confront the Kyuubi again? And then paused, half expecting their answer. Unfortunately, you must face your demon, Alistair said. Perhaps it was the coward in me that didn't want to approach the monster by myself, or perhaps it was the child I was never really allowed to be, but I knew deep down that I was afraid of the beast below. I hate sounding weak, but, is there a way you two could come in with me? Alistair questioned Otto. Is it possible? Otto pondered the idea, one hand resting on his chin as he turned to face the ceiling. In theory, said Otto. Otto paused to consider this further. If we incorporated a dynamic scanning function and used it to transmit ourselves, I suppose Naruto would be solely responsible for creating the mindscape function, but I am not totally sure how it would operate. For the first time in a long time, I deliberately closed my eyes and forced myself back into the sewer, saying, so I guess I'll try and find the cage again. After a few minutes, I was feeling pretty sad. Drip. I must admit that I did not think that would work, because when I opened my eyes again, I was back in the sewers. Hey, Otto? Alistair? Is there anyone out here? After a few minutes of meandering through the sewer tunnels of my mind, I eventually came across my benefactors. I must have serious problems if my mind is a sewer. Oh no. It hurts, I said, sorry, and then I realized who I had run into. The first was undoubtedly Otto, but I wasn't sure about the second. He was a very muscular man with pale grayish skin, yellow eyes, fin-like growths coming out of his forearms, metal gray legs with a few fin growths ending in talons, and 2 curved growths in the middle of his shoulders. The gray man smiles down at me and jokes, "I see you've noticed the change," in a voice that strikingly resembles Alistair. "What happened to you?" I asked, and he nodded. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you about this sooner. You have only seen my human self thus far, one who was able to walk. I didn't stop the Kingpin's son from going to jail when I worked for him. Herbert Landon turned me into the ultimate spider slayer as retribution for having that freak. After discovering that Kingpin was keeping my father in suspended animation, I finally rebelled," Alistair said. "So why are you now looking this way?" I inquired. "If there is a demon in your mind," Alistair said, "I think that you would want some extra muscle on your side if we have to fight it." "Thank you," I said appreciatively. "It's good to have someone here to assist me." Yeah, Otto concurred. "Maybe we can now go find this demon and end the gratitude party?" I didn't really understand why my mind was a sewer as the three of us began to move through the tunnels. Otto once said, "You must have issues," and eventually we found ourselves staring at the bars separating me from the burden that damn fourth Hokage placed on me. Wait, where did that come from? I always liked the fourth, didn't I? Well, I respected him for beating the Kyuubi, but then I discovered that he stuck it in me. People hated me for that, and he's the reason I'm hated, but he didn't intend for that to happen, so. How can you lose yourself in your own thoughts? We're here to confront you, demon, Otto inquired. Right, I said, gathering all my courage to say, "Kyuubi, come on, get your furry behind out here." Before the nine-tailed fox revealed his face, there was a brief period of silence. "Well, what's the occasion if it's not my favorite Naruto and he's brought friends? Have you come to celebrate your death?" Kyuubi asked sarcastically. "Isn't that a compelling reason to throw a party?" "It's not the most clever creature, is it?" Without flinching in the face of the demon, Alistair remarked. "Kyuubi," was my request. "I am your container and I demand that you stop preventing these two from healing me and hand over your power." Kyuubi remarked thoughtfully, "So these are the ones who refuse to let you and I die. I don't like you humans denying me my eternal peace. Now leave this place." Alistair released laser blasts from the growths on his shoulders, striking the dazed tendrils and pushing them further back. 4 red tendrils, similar to the one that attacked me last time, passed through the bars, all headed towards me. Otto, however, swung out with his 4 metal tentacles before they could touch me, knocking the red things away. Alistair said, "This is your mind and that is your prisoner," as he leapt off one of the walls and barely avoided a horizontal swipe, allowing the tendril to strike it. "You are the master here, so stop that demon with your will." "You're right," I said, suddenly realizing that I was in charge and that I defined this world. The room began to tremble violently as I roared out the final words. The water dried up, the brick walls and ceiling collapsed, and the tendrils froze before being driven back into the cage. Otto urged, "That's it, Naruto, show the demon who's boss." The walls changed from brick to light blue metal in the shape of half circles extending from the floor to the ceiling. Computers rose up in sections of the new mindscape, and directly behind Naruto rose a half-circular desk made of rich dark green stone with computers on top of it and a throne-like chair in the center. The floor was now a mixture of stainless steel with the occasional carpet for pleasing aesthetics. Alistair exclaimed in awe, "Incredible, it looks exactly like Crime Central," ended with Otto saying, "Memories of this location must have slipped in somehow." The cage bars changed into a clear glass sphere that started to collapse on the Kyuubi until the fox had very little space left, and I let all of my anger and wrath come to the surface and gazed into the eyes of the bane of my life, only dimly aware of the awe my benefactors were experiencing. I sarcastically said, "Now you listen to me, mighty demon. I tried to be nice and I tried to only use your power in emergencies, but you denied my request and instead tried to kill me. Naruto Uzumaki is dead, and guess what? It worked. I'll be damned before I lose to you because I'm his heir and replacement, the heir to Otto Octavius, Alistair Smythe, and a host of other people I haven't met yet. I'll take your power, demon, if you refuse to give it to me." The demon fox roared in agony at every stab, and seconds after insertion, red energy was drawn out of the Kyuubi, and once it hit the sphere, the color changed to blue before fading into the wires and presumably entering my body. The sewer's old pipes shrank and transformed into electrical cables that went through the sphere and punctured Kyuubi's hide. "Doesn't it hurt?" I made fun of the beast's suffering to the point where even I felt afraid. Go ahead, Kyuubi said feebly, his voice hoarse from the yelling it had done. Kill me. Oh my dear demon, I mocked. You seem to forget, I said, lifting my right hand palm upward. There are fates worse than death. As I finished speaking, I swiftly closed my fist and pulled it back to me at the same moment. The biggest wire dropped from the ceiling and punctured Kyuubi's skull and neck. The demon that had caused Konoha so much suffering and devastation let out the loudest pained scream to date and fell, its eyes that were once so full of malice, dulling. I started staring down at the skewered fox and said, I don't know how mind and soul are connected, but I do know this. In the same way that you would dissect a frog or, better yet, a toad to see the parts that are still working, I am currently cutting off your higher brain functions from the rest of your body. I think the process's name is pith in any case. The procedure and your strength should allow your body to live for a very long time while your mind is reduced to a vegetable. This could indicate that your soul will die. Isn't that fantastic? We both get what we wanted, I said, echoing Kyuubi's previous derisive tone. But would you mind doing me a favor before you leave, Kyuubi? When you see the Shinigami, tell it that when I stand before him to be ready to regurgitate the fourth Hokage's soul, Naruto Octavius Smythe is going to be taking a pound out of the bastard's spiritual flesh. There was a hand on each of my shoulders, and the demon's eyes closed, hopefully for the last time. All of the rage, wrath, and fury that the Kyuubi had evoked in me abruptly vanished, to be replaced by shock. I said, what did I do? What had to be done? Otto said in a kind and understanding tone. You did nothing more than put a rabid animal out of your misery. Killing is never easy, sympathetically added Alistair. We try to avoid it whenever possible, but ultimately in our line of work it's unavoidable. The best thing you can do is not dwell on it and move on with your life. Alistair laughed. Now what's with you calling yourself Octavius Smythe? I started, terrified of being rejected. Well, you said I was your heir, I said. So that's like a son, so I thought it'd be okay if I used your last names now. The two men grinned as they exchanged glances. Otto said, yes, I think that would be just fine, with joy. Alistair said, I have no problems with that, before gesturing to Otto and asking, but why does he get top billing? Well, his last name ends with S, and yours starts with it, so it sounds like one flowing word, I replied. Makes sense, decided both men as the day's events swept over me. My shoulders slumped and my eyelids felt suddenly heavy. Alistair gave the order, and now it's time for you to sleep. I said, all right, without arguing, good night, fathers. As I finally let sleep take me, the world darkened once more. Since Naruto is asleep and this information is crucial, we now switch to the third person. In their time capsule, ship, or lab, Alistair Smythe and Otto Octavius reappeared and gazed down at their sleeping son. Alistair remarked, he looks so peaceful for one who has lived such a troubled life. It amazes me how powerful he is and how he hasn't gone mad with power yet. Otto answered, yes, I think we did well in choosing an heir. I am curious though, while Naruto was changing the sewer into crime central in his mindscape and attacking the demon, did your sensors detect anything? Yes, Smythe said, turning to face Otto. My sensors picked up two distinct brainwaves trying to manifest themselves while the cage was warping. Why do you suppose they were going to do? Most likely the two other presences were trying to make themselves known to prevent his efforts, replied Smythe. The renowned Dr. Octopus said, that seems entirely possible. Did you destroy them? No, I was intrigued as to how they were able to do that without our level of technology and what they were going to say, so I have had their consciousnesses transferred to a subdirectory for analysis to determine who they are. Do you think we should tell Naruto? The robotics wizard asked his friend. In time, replied Otto, he's had a very full day and has been burdened by much. Let us wait until things calm down before we inform him. Besides, he'll be too busy adapting to the implants and training to really care. This has been an eventful evening, Alistair remarked, grinning at Naruto once more. So what are we going to do tomorrow night? The same thing we're going to do every night, Alistair, noted Otto, help Naruto take over the world. What abilities and powers will Naruto acquire? In the forthcoming Chunin exams, how will he perform in comparison to Neji Hyuga and the others? What allusions to things that are unquestionably unrelated to Spider-Man will I make in the upcoming chapter? Fiction readers, until next time. Notes from the authors. Thank you to everyone who has read the story so far. It has received over 700 hits and is undoubtedly turning into one of my more well-known pieces. We are also grateful to Zeralan, Nobody Foot Soldier, the Elemental Dragon Emperor, Ninja Bat Master, Number 14 Daxlan, and Jiraiya's Apprentice for their reviews. You should check out my other fanfiction, Naruto Shikigami, The Blood's Mirror, if you haven't already. The translation of Mein Gott is, My God, I'm basing the Spider-Man portion of the story on Spider-Man. The animated series from the 1990s, so if you're perplexed by what Otto and Alistair described, I recommend watching it. I hope the majority of you received my final, albeit modified, reference, but I've included one more this time. I changed a well-known signature line in a wrestling reference. Could you please tell me who I'm referring to? Here's an omake for everyone to enjoy, just for an added laugh based on a scraped idea. Omake. Incorrect file list. A blinding flash of white light exploded my world, and then I was inundated with faces, numbers, and facts. Interplanet Janet. She's a galaxy girl, a solar system miss from a future world. Conjunction junction. What's your function? Hooking up words and phrases and clauses. Oh, elbow room, got to get us some elbow room. I heard someone ask, Naruto? Naruto? Are you awake? Alistair and Otto were staring down at me when I opened my eyes. I said the first thing that sprang to mind as I glanced at the former supervillain pair. I'm just a Bill. Yes, I'm only a Bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Otto shouted. Dumb cough, dummy. To Alistair. You downloaded Schoolhouse Rock into the boy. Lolly, get your adverbs here. You can accomplish a lot in just 2 weeks. You can watch every episode of almost any TV show that has ever been produced, read at least one excellent book, repaint a few rooms of a house, or fail to learn how to summon toads and end up falling off a cliff. That last one is something I would advise against. The second 2 weeks of my training were much more fruitful. I spent day after day repairing and improving my body to enable me to utilize all of the powers stored in the computer banks of my father's ship. Before I left for the Chunin exams, which were scheduled to start in a few hours, I used the opportunity to check myself out on one of the base's reflective surfaces to make sure everything was in order. To be honest, I haven't yet employed the entire range of skills Alistair claimed were built into their equipment, but it wasn't for lack of trying. I'm impatient and young, so what can I say? I immediately wanted all of the new abilities, including the metal arms, the acid-spitting tail, the wings to fly with, and the youth-absorbing gauntlets that I didn't really need. However, it would be entertaining to absorb Kakashi's youth and discover whether his hair was truly silver or turning gray. In any case, I met with all of the people whose minds had been scanned into the time capsule, and with their assistance as well as my father's, we came up with a short list of specific abilities that I would receive prior to the Chunin exam, along with the initial treatments that would enable the transference of extra genetic patterns without altering my original DNA. Alistair told me that the ability to turn on and off a subject's abilities while maintaining the subject's natural appearance was Herbert Landon's greatest contribution to genetics while developing a formula based on the one that produced a well-known superhero from my father's world. Commander, Major, Captain, and his super soldier serum. Landon had developed the procedure. Alistair appeared to be adamant that I undergo this treatment first in order to prevent me from being forced into a form that would prevent me from moving freely among people. I could tell that father detested the fact that the only way he could move was by changing into a weapon, even though he always seemed to be in his human form around me. As his holographic self materialized behind me, Alistair began to say, "Let me save you some trouble, you look good. And I'm sure that all of those hormone-crazed women in the stands will be eyeing you like a piece of meat and wet with lust." I smirked and said, "You mean because they'll be drooling so much?" "Sure," said Alistair drearily. He simply watched me finish getting ready and said, "Let's go with that." I turned to my father, who had been forcibly mutated, and joked, "Save the image to your hard drive, it'll last longer." "Sorry," he said, sounding a little ashamed. "I guess it's just, I don't feel comfortable with you going off to fight in this silly tournament where you could get seriously hurt." The voice said, "I have said it before and I'll say it again," and I realized that it was German. Otto Octavius, my other father and a pioneer in mind-controlled robotics, entered the room and said, "Smythe, you are the most sentimental of all of us. Do you not have faith in our work? Do you not have faith in those whose minds have helped train Naruto?" "I have complete faith that Naruto could crush any of those mere ninja he is to fight using only my arms. The other abilities are just there in case." "I know," said Alistair, "I'd rather not see him get hurt." "Neither would I," Otto concurred, "but I would rather be proud and declare his victory rather than outwardly display my concern. Naruto has only been training for a couple weeks. It took you months of work to make your arms capable of the delicate movements necessary to performing your experiments. But he was also given copies of all my memories of using my arms and could thus build upon my skills and can now use them as well as I could," Otto rebutted. I said, "Naruto would like to know if Naruto has left and if this is the reason that he is being referred to as if he is not in the room," before my father's argument could get too heated. "Sorry," both men muttered or apologized. I said with a smile as I left through the closest door, "As much as I'd love to watch you two fight again, the exam is going to start in a couple hours and I need to get going. Auf Wiedersehen, Vader," I said. Third person. Our son's growing up, Otto said regretfully. Seems like only yesterday he came crashing onto our roof. It was yesterday, but if you're talking about the first time, it was 2 weeks ago and he came to us as a teenager already, replied Alistair. Yeah, but a teenager that had already gone through too much. The man with the flat top cut said, come on, with a more upbeat tone than before. Let's go to the communication center and in 5 minutes we can bother Naruto when he exits the chasm. Better make it 7, said Otto. It rained last night, might make the going tougher. As the two turned away from the door and started to walk to the control room, Alistair said, all right, adding a few seconds later in a playful manner. I still can't believe you taught Naruto German of all things. Otto asked, his German accent thicker than usual. You have a problem with German? Alistair said, I like German beer, after giving it some thought. You're all right, Smythe. The Chunin exams were arguably the most divisive event that the 5 great shinobi nations could experience. The ninja they sent would basically stand in for a nation's strength, for all of the nation's clients were more likely to send you missions if you had more advanced ninja. Sadly, the opposite was also true. Countries that performed poorly on the Chunin exams usually saw a decline in mission requests until the next time the country performed well on the tests. Although the Chunin exams were the hardest to earn of all the missions, the hosting country frequently made more money from them than from a dozen rank missions. Among a few dozen other tasks, these included scheduling the first test rounds, coordinating with foreign countries regarding the number of genin being sent, coordinating with foreign dignitaries regarding their accommodations, and placing ANBU members in various locations throughout the city due to the need for increased security in order to protect potential clients and keep an eye on foreign teams to prevent them from stealing national secrets. This was the worst Chunin exam ever for the highly acclaimed God of the Shinobi, Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage. First, Sarutobi detested raisins, so his secretary ordered cinnamon rolls with raisins on the first day of the exam. Second, Sarutobi was not happy that a person with Biju power and a penchant for murder was passing through his village. Suna had sent an insane Jinchuriki as part of their entry team. It had taken some effort to discover this. Third, Sarutobi detested curse seals, with the exception of Anko's, which allowed him to see more of the purple-haired Jonin's body than usual. Orochimaru had revealed himself and interfered with the exams by applying a curse seal to Sasuke. His favorite student, Jiraiya, the Toad Sannin, author of the renowned #1 best-selling Icha Icha series, and owner of Konoha's secret record of the most hits a woman has given him in a single day, 4,380. Although many demanded that this be marked with an asterisk because Tsunade was responsible for at least 45 of those hits, was the last straw. Flashback. 2 weeks had passed since Jiraiya replaced Ebisu as Naruto's trainer, and Sarutobi had instructed Jiraiya to provide an update on Naruto's training progress. As soon as Jiraiya entered the room grinning, Sarutobi realized that something was amiss because Jiraiya's smile was phony. The elderly Hokage questioned his former pupil. What happened? Nothing. Jiraiya blurted out. Got some great research in, it should make the next book a hit. And I trust that Naruto has been training rather than assisting you in your research? Oh yeah, the kid has been training hard every day, exhausts himself. I can see a lot of my old apprentice in him, yeah. And where is Naruto? Weakly, Jiraiya said, you don't know. Oh, well he's, at home? Sarutobi snarled. Jiraiya, where is Naruto? I don't know, acknowledged the Toad Sannin. We were training, I turned my back and, he disappeared. Disappeared? Roared Sarutobi. How can you lose a blonde-haired, orange-wearing, ramen-loving teenager? Well, we were training near that waterfall all the civilian girls love going to, and I was making some notes, and then it got quiet, and when I turned around he was gone. Sarutobi rubbed his forehead and sighed. One day, you couldn't put off your research one day and focus more on Naruto? He was practicing how to summon. There's not much you can do but repeat it over and over again so you can practice the hand signs, build a connection with the animal on the scroll, and build up the chakra reserves by draining them through the summoning process, Jiraiya clarified. The sensei angrily said, I know that, to his former pupil. I'm the one who taught it to you. That still doesn't excuse you from ignoring Naruto. Relax, sensei, said Jiraiya in a confident voice. How much trouble could the kid have gotten into? A cloud of smoke erupted between the two ninja, interrupting Sarutobi's threat. You had better hope that he is all right, Jiraiya, or so help me. When the smoke cleared, it became clear that a toad, not just any toad, had called itself into the room. Among the most significant toads was this one. Fukasaku, the PA toad, was the only toad with eyebrows and a beard. Jiraiya asked in surprise, PA? Have you found Naruto? Jiraiya, Fukasaku replied gravely. Fukasaku fell silent as he searched for the right words. It's no use, The only toads that Naruto summoned were all too young to be of any help, and there's something else. What? Inquired Jiraiya and Sarutobi. His name, Fukasaku said hesitantly, has turned black on our copy of the scroll. You know what that means? No, Jiraiya exclaimed, startled. It can't be true, PA. You must have seen it wrong. Naruto can't be dead, Sarutobi said, his head bowed to the floor in shock. Naruto is dead. Sensei, I'm sorry, in the same tone of voice that once stopped 3 companies of Iwa ninja, Sarutobi interrupted him, saying, get out of my sight before I say something we'll both regret and pray that Kami is kind and Fukasaku's scroll is faulty. But Sensei, I could, Sarutobi yelled, now, and struck the desktop with his fist, causing it to shatter. Fukasaku disappeared in a puff of smoke, and Jiraiya fled the room before he could flee from any female who might try to harm him. Finally sensing his age, Sarutobi collapsed back into his chair in the empty room as he had done when his wife had passed away many years ago. The elderly leader began to cry. He then began to pray to all the gods he had ever heard of in hopes of bringing his surrogate grandson back. Flashback end. That night, and every night since, Sarutobi had not slept well. The third Hokage had been deceiving the few people who were interested in Naruto into thinking he was training outside of the village for the last 2 weeks. However, reality had suddenly set in when Naruto's name was called. He would not appear, and Sarutobi would have to declare that the boy was either dead or missing at the end of the competition. The fact that the majority of the villagers might genuinely celebrate the news devastated him. Sarutobi thought to himself, perhaps this was the time to retire. I'm growing too old to put up with this nonsense. However, the arrival of his Suna counterpart brought the elderly leader's thoughts back to the present before he could sink too far into his melancholy. Lord Casecage, Sarutobi said, you must be tired from your long journey. The Casecage said courteously, not at all, it was a good thing that it was held here this time. But the trip would have been too much for a man of your years. Lord Hokage, perhaps it's time for you to choose a 5th Hokage. Thank you for the concern, was Sarutobi's courteous response. The renowned 3rd Hokage stood up and approached the railing of the cage's box to speak to everyone gathered. Perhaps one of the genin today will prove to be a worthy successor, but now I believe it's time to begin the festivities. Thank you everybody for coming to the Hidden Leaf's Chunin exam. We will now start the main tournament matches between the 8 participants who made it through the preliminaries. Please stay and watch all of the battles until the end. Thank you, and let the battles begin. An excellent speech, Lord Hokage, said the Casecage. However, I believe you should have counted the contestants before giving it. There seems to be a couple competitors missing from the proceedings. Sarutobi merely said, I'm sure they will be here soon, before muttering, Naruto, please do the impossible again and be alive. A line of 6 Chunin hopefuls faced Genma Shiranui, one of Konoha's Tokubetsu Jonin. He was a long-haired man with a senbon needle in his mouth and a backwards forehead protector. Before we begin, Genma clarified. The 6 genin glanced at the paper and saw that not much had changed. There's been a change in the pairings. Dosu Kinuda of Otogakure has been removed. Note the new matchups and prepare to battle when called upon. Now then, let the matches proceed. First match, Neji Hyuga vs Naruto Uzumaki. All other contestants please leave the battleground. The crowd's murmurs intensified as 5 of the 6 genin in attendance ascended the stairs. That blonde punk's gonna get his ass handed to him. His luck's run out. Against the Hyuga, the demons got no chance. It goes without saying that the seats surrounding the man who said, I should not have eaten that case of beans, swiftly cleared out. This is the final call for Neji Hyuga vs Naruto. Genma began. But the door that led directly from the outside to the arena floor suddenly flew open. Despite the fact that none of the Aburame clan's members had blonde hair in a buzz cut, the teenager who strode through the open door would have looked almost at home in his tan trench coat and sunglasses. The teenager said, I apologize for being late, and then he removed his sunglasses to reveal his vivid blue eyes before putting them in an inner coat pocket. He concluded by taking off his trench coat with a flourish and tossing it onto a nearby tree branch. But I am here now and ready to go. Genma questioned the blonde. Naruto? In the flesh, answered Naruto. The Naruto they were observing must have experienced a significant growth spurt, according to Sarutobi, Genma, and almost everyone else in the stands. A taller, more composed blonde wearing a dark black bodysuit with dark orange boots, gloves, and a chest plate replaced the short, talkative, emotional blonde everyone had been expecting in a bright orange jumpsuit. Imagine Doc Ock's outfit, but with Naruto's Shippuden color scheme. What was most obvious, though, was how much more muscular the new Naruto was, with bigger muscles in his arms and a 6-pack readily apparent in his stomach as expected. Naruto's Adonis-like physique caused many of the teenage girls to start getting wet because they were drooling too much. Naruto slipped into a loose fighting stance, with his feet slightly apart and his fists raised, and asked, "Now then, shall we fight? I am eager to defeat you, Neji. It will be fun to watch you fall apart when you discover reality," Neji said aloud, his left palm facing forward and his right arm bent and by his side. His eyes, Neji thought as he activated his Byakugan and slipped into the Jiyuken stance, are the eyes of a confident man, a person who has no doubt in himself. Ready, fight. Genma gave the order to move aside from the two fighters for the first few seconds. Neither side moved, staring at the other with blue eyes full of self-assured indifference and white eyes full of rage. In an attempt to elicit a response from the typically easily agitated blonde, Neji mockingly asked, "Too scared to move?" "Nope," Naruto cheerfully answered. Neji remained motionless, keeping his Byakugan eyes on his opponent while observing the greater quantity of chakra Naruto had around his back. "Just being polite and letting you have the first move." Once more, neither side spoke or moved. This went on for a few minutes, and the audience mistook Naruto's passivity for fear. The silence was abruptly broken when Naruto said, "All right, I'm bored now. If you're not going to attack, I will." With his arms poised to strike, the blonde shinobi charged forward. Naruto delivered a straightforward right punch as soon as he was close enough. Neji countered with a palm thrust after barely avoiding the blow to save position and energy in response. Naruto used his opposite arm to deflect the attack downward and used his momentum to swiftly bring his left leg around, which Neji blocked with his opposite arm. Following the brief interaction, both competitors leapt backward, paving the way between them. Naruto responded, "Not a bad way to start," in jest. This time, Neji charged forward and engaged Naruto in hand-to-hand combat, saying, "But I'm still waiting to see you show off your much-vaulted taijutsu style." The two ninja moved quickly enough to give the impression to onlookers that they each had 12 hands, either attacking or blocking one of their opponent's hands. However, as in many battles, experience was crucial because, in spite of Naruto's best efforts, Neji managed to briefly breach Naruto's defenses. Naruto briefly stopped when the Hyuga prodigy took advantage of the situation and hit his rib cage with a Jiyuken strike. Neji took advantage of the situation and struck Naruto's left lung and right shoulder hard enough to knock him back onto his back. Neji told his defeated opponent, "My Jiyuken has connected with your left bronchi, making you unable to breathe properly. Without medical treatment you should accept your fate and forfeit." Naruto held his right hand where Neji had struck him and took a deep breath, nearly wheezing. "Pathetic," teasingly said Neji. Genma glanced at Naruto for a moment before responding, "He is still able to fight." Neji was about to respond when the ground behind him exploded, and a metal rope wrapped around his waist and threw him backward with enough force to put a quarter of the arena's distance between the fighters. "Proctor, he is obviously defeated. Please end this fight." Neji stood up and watched as 3 more metal ropes with 3-pronged claws emerged from the ground, shattering the ground surrounding Naruto. The 4 metal structures emerged from Naruto's back as his body also rose from the ground, shocking the audience. Naruto's lower right arm lightly brushed his back off as his body leaned forward and he regained his balance. With no indication of the wheezing he had been doing earlier, Naruto said, "Thank you, number 6, I'm fine. That actually tingled. I was only acting like it hurt so you 6 would have time to get underground." Neji questioned, "What are those?" "Take your pick," Naruto answered. Naruto rushed forward with greater speed after saying, "A legacy I've inherited, a gift from a loving father, or if it makes you feel any better I suppose you could call them fate's weapon against you." Neji managed to raise his arms in time to block the blows from Naruto's flesh arms, but he was caught in the middle of another tentacle that caught him in the stomach when one of Naruto's tentacles balled up in a fist and landed on his left cheek. Neji would fly off in a different direction and into the path of another tentacle if one of the tentacles struck him in the arm, leg, head, chest, or back. This created a chain reaction. Kiba asked aloud, "How is he doing this? What kind of weapon is that?" Hinata stammered in shock as her crush attacked her cousin in a way that had never been done before. "And Naruto," she said. After a minute, Naruto grabbed Neji by both arms and gave him a squeeze. Naruto said gravely, "I suggest you concede defeat before I'm forced to break your bones," drawing his arms closer to emphasize his point. "Never," Neji moaned with a snap filling the air and Neji exploding in a cloud of smoke to be replaced by a log. Naruto remained silent and continued to tighten his grip. As his gaze searched the field for his missing opponent, Naruto taunted, well, looks like I was wrong. You do know something other than Juken. I forgot. Unless you're just an awesome shinobi like Lee or I, you have to know 3 specific jutsu, although I must say, having to actually use one, hardly Hyuga family style." In response, Neji emerged from behind one of the trees in the arena, appearing bruised but still capable of fighting. "And what do you know of the Hyuga family style?" Neji responded. "Only that all of the members of your clan that I've seen only seem to be able to do 3 things. 1. Use their fancy taijutsu style. 2. Walk around with a 10-foot pole shoved up their ass. And 3. Flaunt the eyes that every pervert in the world would give anything to have." Naruto laughed. Neji growled. "You dare mock the Byakugan? Only because I'm positive you either lack a sex drive entirely or you use it to look under women's clothing whenever you want," Naruto said casually. "So unless you've got something else you'd like to share with the group. You mock a clan you do not understand, you do not know of our clan's destiny of hatred. Enlighten me." When Neji reached up and untied the knot on his Hite-8, he revealed the hooked swastika on his forehead. The main family of the Hyuga clan has a technique that has been passed through the line. A cursed seal. This is the Hyuga clan's caged bird seal. A symbol of forced servitude. I was branded with this when Hinata turned 3. Naruto asked in a perplexed tone, "So the reason you tried to kill her is because they tattooed you against your will?" As an afterthought, Neji added, "The ultimate protection." Neji explained solemnly, "The seal does so much more. With a gesture any member of the main clan can torture any branch member or destroy their mind, killing them, sealing the Byakugan in the process." Naruto muttered, "There is no monster greater than man," loud enough for Neji and the disregarded Genma to hear. "Yes, this protection was used by the main branch when they killed my father," Neji said, his rage evident as soon as this secret was revealed. The crowd's little remaining noise was silenced. One night, Hinata was abducted. But Hiyashi killed the abductor before he could get too far. Who do you suppose the abductor was revealed to be? "Somebody important, I'd bet," Neji said. "Kumo's ambassador. He looks pretty healthy for a corpse." Naruto glanced out of the corner of his eye to where the head of the Hyuga clan was sitting, looking ashamed. Kumo raged that Konoha had violated their recent peace treaty. Tension mounted. War seemed inevitable, and then a deal was struck. Kumo wanted Hiyashi corpse, and the village agreed. "The main branch killed my father, Hiyashi's twin brother, to protect their precious clan head because of a few seconds difference between their births. My father was fated to die to protect the main branch like you, despite you new weapons, or fated to be defeated here and now. Fatalism does not become you Hyuga," Naruto said. However, Naruto's tentacles swung out toward the cursed Hyuga, causing him to bob, dodge, and lunge away from them until he was caught with the wall to his back and arms coming at him from 4 different directions. "Besides, I do not believe in fate. Fate is the crutch the weak of spirit use to make themselves feel better when they fail. You Neji Hyuga do not strike me as a failure. Therefore, you have no reason to rally against fate. But enough of this sad trip down memory lane. En garde." The metal tentacles were knocked away as Neji began spinning quickly, turning into a blur of expelled chakra, just before any claw could make contact. Hakesho Kaden. 8 trigrams palms heavenly spin. At the sight of one of the main branch's signature moves, the crowd's silence gave way to shouts of surprise. "You are truly a genius, my nephew," Hiyashi thought, "to learn the Kaden without any aid. Neji's greatest defense is that he can see all around him and expel chakra from all of his chakra points, spinning like a top to deflect any attack," Tenten reflected to herself. Naruto remarked, "Nice trick. It appears that someone else has a ultimate defense that I will need to overcome. So, let's see how long you can continue." The Hyuga was forced to continue spinning or take a hit as the tentacles came back to life, attacking Neji at random points across his defense. For a few minutes, Neji would block a strike that knocked the arm backward, then a second arm would attack, forcing Neji to block the recovering first arm and a third arm. Suddenly, Naruto's eyes widened, he grinned, and his arms began attacking in a new pattern that ended with Naruto's lower right arm catching Neji's left wrist, and the momentum of the face shot caused Neji to hit the nearby wall. Naruto retracted his tentacles slightly to keep Neji at a safe distance. "I refuse to be defeated by the likes of you," Neji growled, shaking the cobwebs from his head. Naruto ordered his tentacles to attack again in his mind, and Neji countered with the Kaden again to block each attack. However, this time, it only took 1 minute for Naruto to take advantage of a weakness in the defense, catching Neji in the right knee, causing it to buckle, which disrupted Neji's defense and allowed Naruto's lower right tentacle to strike him in the same cheek, knocking him on his butt. "Nice shot, number 6. Do you see now? That's why you never call anything the ultimate. What happens if it's surpassed? Is your Kaden the kind of ultimate defense? Very nearly ultimate defense, or ultimate unless Naruto is attacking you, in which case you're screwed defense." As he approached his defeated opponent, Naruto remarked, "Actually, I like that last one." When he got no response, he inquired, "What's the matter? You used to be quite talkative, now you're at a loss for words?" Neji grinned confidently and said, "Yeah, you're within the field of my divination," before lunging forward to deliver what he hoped would be the final blow with a speed that only the most desperate could match. 8 trigrams 64 palms. A pair of palms. Neji struck Naruto twice. Neji's hands moved twice as quickly to deliver twice as many strikes in the same amount of time with each subsequent cry. 4 palms. Neji continued to hit Naruto. A total of 8 palms, 4 more blows. There are 16 palms, 8 more blows, 32 palms, an additional 16 strikes. There are 64 palms. The attack ended with 32 blows, each of which knocked Naruto back a little while and, inexplicably, caused his tentacles to fall lifelessly around Neji, despite the fact that Naruto stayed upright with his head lowered. What kind of talent! For a branch member to surpass members of the main house, it's such a shame he cannot become an heir, Hiyashi muttered. At the same time, Hinata, Sakura, Ino, and a few others thought, Naruto, after witnessing the blonde being severely battered. Ino covered her mouth and closed her eyes, saying, "I knew it." Sarutobi thought, "Come on, Naruto, don't let Neji beat you, you defeated death." As he hurled a barrage of punches at the prone Hyuga, naming them as he went, Naruto exclaimed, "That tickled," his head and tentacles suddenly shooting up and securing Neji's appendages. "My turn." Haymaker, jab, jab, backfist, arm punch, hammer fist, kidney punch, rabbit punch, uppercut, left hook, and Superman. Neji took the final blow to the face and fell backwards as Naruto completed releasing him. "Hell of a left hook," Genma exclaimed, looking shocked. After analyzing Naruto's recollections of the Neji vs Hinata battle, Smythe concluded that if Naruto's chakra coils were thickened, the Jiyuken strikes would no longer be effective because they couldn't force the coils to constrict, cutting off the chakra flow. "I have to remember to thank Dad for all these upgrades," Naruto thought to himself. "So let's review. I've likely cracked, if not broken, half a dozen of your ribs, I've breached your ultimate defense twice, and I can shrug off the foundation of your offensive capabilities," Naruto said. "I'd suggest you give up now to save us all some trouble." "Never. You only got through my Kaden through luck," Neji growled, groaned. Forcing himself to stand once more, Naruto retreated a few steps, allowing both men to launch an attack. While it is true that the Byakugan gives the bearer 360 degrees of vision, it is up to the bearer to decide what to focus on. "Really, let's test your hypothesis," said Naruto as his tentacles began attacking once more, but this time they only targeted Neji's sides. Neji was so preoccupied with his sides that he failed to notice the gray masses that grew out of his forearms and formed into a pair of metal bracers similar to those once worn by the villain known as the Shocker. "Just when you think you know the answers, I change the questions." Naruto raised his armored arms forward and together, then pressed a trigger on the side of the gauntlets, causing an invisible column of compressed air to strike the front of Neji's Kaden as Naruto's tentacles retracted. Neji tried to strengthen the Kaden's barrier in front of him as the air blast forced him backward. Eventually, he lost his balance, and the Kaden encased Neji was hurled into the arena wall, causing a huge impact with the stone structure. In an instant, Naruto materialized in front of Neji and buried his right gauntlet in his stomach. The Hyuga's world exploded as the gauntlet's vibrations shook all of his bones, aggravating all of his injuries and tearing at his insides. Neji coughed up blood and slumped forward onto Naruto's arm. Starting to lose consciousness, Naruto leaned forward slightly and whispered, "I have broken you, Neji Hyuga, but what is broken can be mended. Come to me if your clan has cut your wings, and I'll guarantee that the broken bird will fly." "I won't lie, I liked it. There's nothing like totally destroying an enemy to make a man feel alive." Speaking of enemies, I looked down at my fallen foe. Neji Hyuga. He had so much potential, but it was all squandered on his hatred of the main Hyuga house and his worship of fate. That's not to say that Neji's hatred was wasted. Rather, it was unfocused, like a campfire compared to a blowtorch, which can accomplish a lot, but the blowtorch burns hotter and more direct. I looked at the referee, Genma, I think, and it appears that my gaze jolted him out of his daze at the unexpected triumph. He recalls his duties and starts to announce, "Winner of the match, Naruto Uzu." I cut in, "Octavius Smythe." "What?" Confused, Genma asks. "That is my new last name, please abide by my request." "Very well," Genma said with a hint of doubt, "Winner of the match, Naruto Octavius Smythe." The crowd's response was as perplexed as Genma's response to my new name. The out-of-town guests applauded my triumph, while the Konoha locals were comparatively silent. It makes sense that the foreigners were unaware that they were supposed to despise me as much as Konoha does. In this situation, the old me would have been laughing, waving, and jumping around in childlike celebration. The new me chose a more dignified response, nodding my head in thanks in the general direction of those I saw cheering. Number 6 retrieved my trench coat and draped it over my shoulder as I crossed my flesh arms. I walked toward the contestant holding area intent on giving the viewing audience one more show. Instead of taking the stairs, I walked directly toward the wall. My upper 2 tentacles stretched forward and latched onto a section of the wall above me and pulled upward, lifting me into the air. My lower 2 tentacles stretched forward and latched onto the wall above the first 2, and working in concert, my 4 tentacles carried me up the wall. Think Doc Ock climbing the walls in Spider-Man 2. My climb ended with 2 tentacles wrapping around 2 of the pillars in the contestants' viewing area and pulling me over the railing and safely onto my feet. Among my competition, all 4 tentacles released from whatever they had attached to and retracted, taking positions to defend me from any attack. "Hello everyone," I said happily. "It's funny how we all seem to wind up sitting in the same spot, isn't it? How is everything going, then?" "Troublesome," replied Shikamaru. "First I'm in this stupid tournament, then they drop my fight with the Sound Ninja, and now you've shown up with a new last name and weird powers." "Yes," said Shino. "Why have you adopted Octavius Smythe as your last name?" "To honor the men who saved my life and brought me into their family after my brush with death," was my straightforward response. Both of my former classmates appeared to have more questions, but I interrupted them by asking, "So where's Sasuke? Has he arrived yet?" If one listened carefully, one could hear the grousing coming from different parts of the stadium. "Not yet," Shikamaru replied, "and he better show up soon," as the majority of the crowd came to watch him fight Gaara. "What's happening? Go ahead and begin the next game. How much longer will you make us wait? Show off your Uchiha." PBTTTTTTTT. After the gas attack, medics had to rush to that corner to recover those who had passed out, and the last sound was not actually spoken but rather expelled by the guy who had eaten too many beans. Confucius said, "The wise do not approach the dangerous," Shino said. "Perhaps Sasuke has taken that advice and will not fight." I retorted, "That's not his style. Sasuke loves testing his power too much to pass on the chance of fighting one of the most powerful genin in the tournament," I said, catching Gaara staring at me out of the corner of my eye. As we all waited to see what would happen to the absent Uchiha, I took advantage of the wait until Sasuke's match to check my tentacles for damage. They were in relatively good shape, with only a few minor dents and scratches, nothing crippling, but it was impressive that the Jiyuken could cause even a small amount of harm to my father's legacy. The dents and natural curvature of the tentacles caused an interesting warping in my reflection, but despite the warped face, I could still see my reflection's black eyes grinning back at me. "No wonder you fought so fast. You wanted to get back to looking at yourself in the mirror," a voice I recognized teased me with through an implant. "You're just jealous you've never had a stadium of girls getting wet over your rival father," I said to Alistair Smythe, one of my fathers. "There was that one time at the robotics seminar in Amsterdam when My other father, Otto Octavius, who made my tentacles, interrupted, saying, "I do not wish to know of your youthful indiscretions, Smythe. Can we just go to the post-fight analysis?" A somber-sounding man remarked, "That ass put up a good fight, but in the end he was no match for our upgraded gauntlets. Nice fighting, Naruto." "Thank you, Shocker," I responded. Although we may have to increase the padding a bit, I could feel the vibrations from that last punch numbing me all the way to my shoulder. "After this silly tournament, we shall look into adjusting it, but maintaining the balance among the various abilities and their requirements is no easy feat," warned Otto. "All right. How did the ocular implants feed go?" I inquired. "A little static whenever you used Shocker's abilities and when you first activated Otto's tentacles," Alistair replied. "Why did you use both abilities anyway?" "To see how they would react to Neji's Kaden," I replied. "And to see how well they would react with your ocular upgrade." No doubt, some of you are confused as to what I'm talking about. During my 2 weeks in the chasm, Alistair began the process to slowly give me his transformed state's powers and abilities, making sure 1,000 times a minute that in no way would I be stuck in the transformed state for the rest of my life. Alistair may be a brilliant scientist, but I swear he can be such a mother hen at times. I finally managed to convince him to install the small head-up display, HUD, that would place itself in front of my eyes without anybody noticing, clear glass versus his yellow-tinted ones. This display would overlay what I saw with information from tiny sensors embedded within myself that would constantly scan whatever they were pointed at or whatever was around me. In the case of Neji, these sensors tracked the pattern of Neji's Kaden and were able to successfully predict where and when I needed to strike to penetrate the so-called ultimate defense. "And you didn't consider the possibility that showing off this power would make people around you who might hurt you reconsider?" Otto questioned mockingly. "Little bit," I replied with a grin. The people here have looked down on me for years. A display of power in defeating a member of Konoha's most respected clans should show them that I am a superior being. If only I could get everyone's focus. After consulting with another shinobi, Genma exclaimed, one of the competitors for the upcoming match hasn't shown up yet, so we're going to postpone this match and start the next one. I said aloud, an interesting development, as people around me actually stared in disbelief. Whoa! This means my match is getting closer, Shikamaru swore, his face showing the most emotion I had ever seen. Kankuro vs Shino Aburame is the next game. Come on into the arena, Genma shouted. Specifically toward the contestant section there was a pause of about 10 seconds before Kankuro answered back loudly enough for Genma to hear but not quite shouting, I forfeit. His gorgeous sister Tamari opened her fan and floated down into the arena on a gust of wind she created, while several of us around the Suna Genin in black gaped in shock at what he was doing. Shino Aburame is the winner. Tamari vs Shikamaru Nara is the upcoming match. I decided to share my thoughts after noticing that Shikamaru paused and muttered to himself about forfeiting as well. Which would be more troublesome, Shikamaru? I asked, fighting one girl now or an eternity of nagging by two girls. Your mother and Ino? Shikamaru reluctantly descends the stairs, clearly pale at the idea of his mother bothering him about this matter for the rest of his life. The two combatants stood opposite one another, swung their weapons frantically at one another for about 20 seconds, and then leapt to the opposing ends of the stadium to engage in a battle of arithmetic. Yes, nothing says, we're awesome ninja. More than seeing two shinobi mentally calculate, I wonder what the others are doing, because this could get really long and boring. Scene break. To provide some peace and quiet from the fighting inside, the stadium's medical wing is situated along the exterior wall. Neji Hyuga heard his uncle recount the tale of how his father gave his life to defend his brother, the leader of the Hyuga clan, in a private room of the medical wing outside the open window. I watched in silence as Hiyashi related his tale and gave Neji a scroll that was probably written by Neji's father to support it. However, nothing shocked Neji or me more than the Hyuga clan leader physically kneeling down to ask his nephew for forgiveness. Neji said, please, raise your head, with tears in his eyes. After getting to his feet, Hiyashi Hyuga and Neji continued their conversation before Hiyashi left the room. Father, is a person's destiny like a cloud with an inescapable flow, or can a person choose the flow he wishes? I don't know, but I want to grow stronger, but I don't know how. Should I stay with the clan and strive to become the strongest Hyuga of them all? But my opponent thoroughly destroyed me and negated the Jiyuken. Should I talk to Uzumaki about he would help me fly? Asked my former opponent as he approached the window and gazed up at the birds. I could not have asked for a better opening, I said. I go by Octavius Smythe now, while continuing to observe the same birds. How are you feeling? I asked Neji as I caught a glimpse of him start a little because he hadn't noticed me. My ribs are a bit tender, Neji acknowledged. What did you hit me with? Multiple concussive vibration waves within a localized area, I said. Neji's expression was bewildered as he gazed at me. Admittedly, it's complicated to explain. Neji nodded and moved away from the window to allow me to climb in. Mind if I come in? She asked. I came here to talk to you about what you said in the arena. I thought about it, and after seeing this display I just wanted to say. I'm sorry, Neji interrupted me to say. I should have let go of my rage and not taken it out on you. No, I replied. You shouldn't have taken it out on me, but you shouldn't let go. Not yet. I wanted to say, I'm sorry. You were right. After seeing what Hiyashi Hyuga just did, I'm convinced you were right. But everything he just said and did, Neji said, giving me a perplexed look. A very good job of acting, I said. He must have been planning this for a while. I don't understand. Why don't you believe Hiyashi? Neji responded. Let's break it down, I said. Fact. Your father died taking the place of your uncle to satisfy Kumo's demands. Fact. The loss of your father has caused you to adopt a hatred of the Hyuga clan to almost rebellious levels. Fact. The main branch of the Hyuga clan hates rebellion, or any form of change really, I added afterward, especially in their clothes. Anytime I pranked one of them they'd just throw whatever clothes they were wearing at the time away. Neji said, that was you? With a quiet mixture of amazement and wonder. The branch clan saw that as a bright spot of their existence, watching the results of those pranks. Thank you for the compliment, but we're getting off track. Where were we? Rebellion. Fact. Hyuga in the past have been executed for far smaller crimes than nearly killing the clan heiress. Fact. You're still alive. Why? Fact. With your victory over Hinata you've become a high-profile target. Fact. You are without a doubt one of the strongest Hyuga the clan has ever produced, especially if you recreated their signature techniques through simple observation. Fact. While the Hyuga hate rebellion, they hate embarrassment more so. Do you realize what this all means? With some confusion, Neji inquired. That you like using the word fact a lot? No, I said, a little irritated. For all accounts you should have been killed by the main branch the moment the second stage of the Chunin exam ended. And yet, here you stand. Why? Because everybody knows who you were and how powerful you were. It would make the Hyuga clan look very bad if they killed the member that is looked at as the strongest of the future generation, so, instead of killing you they need to bring you back into line. Then why does my caged bird seal remain inactivated? Because a beaten dog will try to bite its master, I responded. Instead of pain, the main branch is trying a paradigm shift. A what? I gave a brief explanation, changing from one way of thinking to another. You had this image of your father being thrown to the dogs, but now suddenly they introduce this image of your father rebelling. I used air quotes to emphasize, against his masters, to nobly sacrifice himself to save his brother. A pretty convenient story. One that makes me wonder why it hasn't been told to you sooner. As he started to comprehend my explanation, Neji's eyes grew wide. Answer. They didn't need to change your way of thinking, yet. They were willing to overlook you because you hadn't done anything yet. Then, all of a sudden, you prove yourself superior to the clan heiress, in front of witness including the Hokage. Now, they can't kill you because the Hokage knows that your death will take away what could be a valuable resource in the future, so instead, the main branch invents this tale of your father's death complete with proof. How old were you when he died, Neji? 4. 5. It's been almost a decade. If they had proof of his noble death, why didn't they say anything sooner? Scene break. I was correct. It was tedious and lengthy. I won't go into the dull specifics of the fight. If you're interested, you can look up the official transcript during that fight. However, I did discover 3 very significant things. First, Shikamaru is a genius, especially after exploiting a hole I seem to have left behind. Second, my HUD contains a dozen games. And third, Shocker is addicted to Free Cell. No, said Shocker, put the red 4 and black 5 on the red 6 you freed up and then move all the ones that were under that onto the red 10. But if he does that, replied Alistair, then there will be 2 more cards that will have to be removed before he frees up the ace of spades. So, most of the spades are mine. Got? Otto yelled. A wonderful display of tactical thinking during a battle is occurring in front of our eyes and you 3 are more focused on that silly little card game. We all 3 muttered, sorry, as I ended the program. Besides, Otto said afterward, you should have moved the red 7 to the free cell and moved the cards underneath it so the 2 and 3 of diamonds could be removed from the game. Now he tells us, complained Shocker. A very familiar voice, my own, came into my mind before anyone else could say anything. Beck here, pickup successful. I see Gargan and he's going for his pickup, awaiting end of first round to begin phase 2. Understood, was my response. Beck and Gargan continue business as usual. Fisk, begin Operation Daedalus at earliest convenience. Daedalus? Inquired Smythe, how do you know about him? My father's filled my head with knowledge of math and science. Uncle Wilson decided he should fill my head with all the rest, I replied. Being a philanthropist apparently requires one to know many things about art, culture, and literature. Smythe grumbled, I still don't like how close you 2 have gotten. Relax, father, he is not the same man who wronged your biological counterpart. Besides, his lessons on reading people, cunning and deception far surpassed anything that the Academy taught. Though, I suppose that as a Konoha shinobi, we are supposed to have more honor than to lie and deceive our enemies, I thought. That particular ideology seems counterintuitive to the traditional roles that a ninja performs, said Otto. I concentrated entirely on the field below, where Shikamaru had used his Kagemane no Jutsu, or shadow possession technique, to force Tamari exactly where he wanted her. However, we must save our discussion for another time. It appears this battle has reached its conclusion, after both of them raised their right arms in the air. Shikamaru gave up. Yes, a lengthy, dull shinobi battle involving math ends with one side surrendering after trapping the other after Ino and his mother are done with Shikamaru. I should remember to buy a few flowers to place on his grave because I think I'll miss him. After Shikamaru's forfeit, the audience fell silent, perplexed by his behavior, and then those who had wagered on the reasonably attractive Suna Blonde gave a loud cheer for their winnings while Tamari angrily scaled the walls with a blast of the wind jutsu she had used in the fight. Shikamaru let go of his jutsu and walked up the stairs. I asked my yellow-clad trainer, think I could combine wind jutsu with your techniques, Shocker? Probably not, said Shocker. The wind would mess up the vibrations. The words, a shame, I said as I was finishing my sentence. I heard the proverb, speak of the devil and he doth appear. Well, now let's see if my teammate will arrive. In a whirl of leaves, Sasuke and my so-called sensei both materialized on the field. Show off, I muttered out loud. In his typical monotone, Shino said, It would make sense for him to arrive in a fashion to appease their desire, as the majority of the crowd had come specifically to watch his match. I replied to him, let's see if he can really deliver then. A raised eyebrow greeted Shino's question, you doubt your teammate's skills? Usually no, I answered. However, against an opponent like Gaara most of Sasuke's skills are useless. The sand will block the fire attacks, the fluid nature of his sand shield will act too fast for the Sharingan to react, and his sand armor will absorb most of Sasuke's taijutsu strikes and negate the damage. Shino inquired, what about genjutsu? As I watched Gaara enter the arena holding a sand shishin, I responded, he doesn't know any as far as I know. Trying to score inside information about Sasuke, Shino? Sorry to break it to you but I haven't seen him for a month, so anything I know about him is that far out of date. But you should be careful that you don't put the cart before the horse. Shino, you may have won your first match before it started by forfeit, but I doubt Tamari will forfeit. She's as dangerous as she is beautiful. Out of the corner of my eye I saw that Tamari's cheeks had slightly reddened at my comment. Of course, even if you can squeak out a victory over that beautiful deadly lady, you'll be fighting me in the finals. With a hint of playfulness in his voice, Shino remarked, I see that whatever has given you the additional abilities has not altered your self-confidence, so you would rather fight Tamari than myself in the finals. It would be nice to fight a woman who stays a woman through the entire fight. I said when I said that. Shino raised an eyebrow. Shino's other eyebrow also went up when he said, I fought two women who turned out to be men. Genma stood between but to the side of the two competitors, saying, long stories, I'll tell you someday. Looks like the featured battle is about to begin, I replied. Shino answered, indeed. Genma yelled, Sasuke Uchiha vs Gaara begin, before he leapt aside. Sasuke and Gaara's fight resembled the classic action-packed battle that the audience anticipates from the Chunin exams. In order to demonstrate the versatility of his sand, Gaara created a clone out of it, used his sand walls or armor to block blows, sent his sand to soften the impact with the ground after Sasuke connected with strong blows, and finished by forming a dome to defend himself with spikes that attacked the enemy. Sasuke, on the other hand, displayed his skill with the Sharingan by avoiding Gaara's blow and imitating Rock Lee's fighting technique, which had worked well against Gaara in the previous round. His two siblings' facial expressions, which displayed outbursts of fear and anger toward their brother, caught my attention. As strange as Tamari stood inside his dome, he actually gave Gaara a furious look. I asked my father in my mind, Vaders, why would Tamari be mad at her brother for using a technique? Shouldn't Suna want as many of their members to win as possible? Smythe questioned, if that was true, then why would Kankaro forfeit? Maybe he knew he'd be beaten, Shocker suggested. Too arrogant, said Smythe. Shocker said, maybe he didn't have any techniques that could defeat Shino? He's had a month, I'm sure he must have thought of something, Smythe replied. Maybe he's conserving his strength, Shocker remarked. What for? Inquired Smythe. What could be happening that would require a ninja to use his full strength later? Wait, those patrols we dodged to enter the city, we never took a close look at them. Maybe they weren't patrollers but, Otto said. Invaders, I said abruptly. Konoha is being invaded. Before any of us could finish our conversation, Sasuke formed a ball of lightning in the palm of his hand. Kakashi's Chidori. And the sound of birds chirping and electricity filled the air. For a month, Kakashi had abandoned me in order to teach Sasuke his own method. Deep within Gaara's dome, Sasuke charged forward, plundering the lightning. The world paused for a few seconds before Gaara's ear-splitting yell broke the stillness. Wah! My blood! As a demonic-looking claw swept at Sasuke, he wrenched his arm out of the dome, and time sped up. Gaara stood in the middle, clutching his left shoulder as the dome broke and disintegrated. Feathers suddenly began to fall from the sky, and I felt myself drifting off to sleep. A hospital scene break. Neji gradually transformed back into the person he was prior to our altercation, his face contorted in anger as he realized what I was telling him was true. Murmuring, I'll kill them, Neji said. I'll kill the entire main branch for what they did. How? I inquired as impassively as possible. How exactly will you do that? Neji acknowledged, I don't know, but I'll do it, just you watch. The only thing I'll see is the moment you touch a member of the main house, somebody will activate your seal and kill you. The only thing I'll see is a flame that would be extinguished. The fire in your soul may burn hot, but it's uncontrolled, unfocused. Neji asked in a tone that was both irritated and angry, then what would you do? Wait, I replied, play the role of loyal servant that they want you to. Follow tradition, obey orders, and show respect to those you would rather kill. And while you do that, grow stronger. Learn as much as you can about your clan's taijutsu style and do what you can to counter it. Learn jutsu and techniques that your clan does not know. Neji pointed to his concealed caged bird seal and said, "And what about this? I have found that by using the nanites within my body, I am capable of slowly destroying any seal placed upon me. In fact, one of the first seals that was destroyed was a seal placed upon the back of my neck which interfered with my higher brain functions. My mind, in an attempt to compensate, produced additional neurotransmitters so that I could function normally once the seal was destroyed. My brain functioned normally on its own, and the additional neurotransmitters now allow me to perform and process information at a far higher level than ever before already. My IQ is similar to that of the average members of the Nara clan, and I suspect within a few weeks I can begin to reach levels similar to that of my father's," I continued. "And what about the seal that contains the Kyuubi?" Neji responded. I asked, a little surprised and irritated. "Tragically, while I cannot completely remove." "Wait, how do you about that? All members of the Hyuga clan, regardless of age, have been told about the demon's sealing within you as to understand why sections of the chakra around your navel have been orange at times," Neji clarified. I was present when Hinata first asked her father about it. My thoughts were, so even Hinata knew about the fox, I whispered. She saw me enough with the Byakugan to know about the chakra, and she must have seen how much I struggled with people in the village, and she's supposed to be one of the kindest girls in the village, so why didn't she try to help me? Neji said, "Perhaps it was an act, far too hastily, in fact." "Perhaps," I replied, "but we are off topic. The nanites cannot remove the Kyuubi seal without causing the beast to be released, but perhaps they could remove your seal, or at least the part that causes you pain." "Why would you want to help me after all I have done?" Neji whispered. I gave a straightforward response. "You are a victim just like me. You and I have suffered because of events outside of our control. You because your father was born second, and I because no other baby was born on October 10th. Looking at this world and knowing what I now know, I realized that I needed new allies, ones that I could count on completely as opposed to my useless team. That's why after hearing your story, I knew that you were one of the people that I wanted by my side. Neji, I will help you remove your seal, and I will give you power that no other Hyuga has ever had before, and all I ask in return is that you work with me." Neji questioned, "Don't you mean for you?" "At times yes, I will want you to obey me, but ultimately you will be one of my allies, a partner in my vision of the future. What do you think?" Neji remained silent and simply gazed at me for a short while, seemingly observing me for any indications of dishonesty. Neji said, "Could I have some time to think about it? As long as you promise not to share this conversation with another soul," I replied. Neji gave a nod of approval. "Very well, think about what I am offering. My door is open to you, Neji Hyuga." Boom. The air outside the city walls was filled with the sounds of an explosion. When Neji and I ran to the window and peered out, we saw that a huge snake had just slammed through a wall in the distance. "All units," I heard my own voice respond. "Looks like Orochimaru is launching an attack." Literally, giant snakes are attacking. Suna and Otto Shinobi are fighting Konohas. Gar is freaking out. Looks like he's heading for the forest. And that idiot Sasuke is chasing after him. Beck and Gargan units lay low and only fight if necessary. Fisk unit, upon completion of the mission, engage enemy units as necessary. I'll handle the grunt work. Understood, I said. Along with two other Mi's, I turned back to Neji, who was observing me with interest. "Looks like they started a party out there. You stay and heal up." A few seconds after the scene break began, the original Naruto returned. My eyes opened in what seemed like a matter of seconds. Otto said, "Adrenal stimulation successful," in my ear. "He's awake." Smythe went on, "All systems report normal. Naruto, how do you feel?" "Confused," I said, glancing around and seeing that no one I had shared a box with was there anymore. "Where did they all go?" "We don't know," Smythe answered. "I heard the sounds of fighting throughout the stadium, and I said, we lost the visual when you went unconscious." "Huh," I said. I glanced down into the arena just in time to see Genma severing a Suna ninja's arm, saying, "Sounds like one heck of a party." I noticed a flash of purple light and looked up to see 4 purple columns of light appear and form a cube around the roof of the building across from me, trapping 2 people inside. "I don't think I like this crowd. They play too rough." My eyes grew wide when I saw the Hokage and Orochimaru inside, one holding the other in a sleeper hold. I started to be pulled upward by my tentacles as they stretched and attached to the level above me. I heard Kakashi's voice off to my left as I got to spectator level. Kakashi gave the order, "Nullify the genjutsu on Shikamaru and track down Sasuke." Sakura hid behind one of the seats and said, "Shouldn't I wake up the others?" One of the Suna ninja leapt at Kakashi with a kunai ready. Before he could respond in a flash, I unleashed a blast from the Shocker's gauntlet, sending the ninja crashing into the wall behind Sakura. "Naruto!" exclaimed Sakura and Kakashi. I said, "Yo," in my best Kakashi voice. Naruto, Sasuke's chasing after Garyu, Sakura, and Shikamaru. We'll have to chase after him. Kakashi gave the order. Can't, I answered, continuing to ascend while occasionally firing a blast in the direction of the opposing ninja. I reached the roof before Kakashi could reply, saying, I'm on a mission from a higher authority, but I'll add it to the side quests. Smythe questioned, mission from a higher authority? I replied nonchalantly, yeah, myself. No way am I going to listen to that idiot right now. Otto asked, and what exactly is this mission? I mentally commanded the tentacles to retract into my body and revert to their nanite form. One that Uncle Wilson would love, I answered before anyone could respond. I aimed both gauntlets at an angle toward the ground, fired a quick pulse, and leapt into the air. And you too, Shocker, I'm going to find out just how strong your gauntlets are. I was propelled higher into the air by a shockwave created when the two attacks collided. I repeatedly followed this pattern, ascending higher and higher into the sky until I was well above Konoha. I saw Gaara, Temari, and Kankuro in the clearing in front of one of Konoha's numerous forests. As I stood up, or rather, my HUD locked onto them, with Sasuke trailing closely behind. Additionally, I saw 3 enormous snakes that were somehow breaching Konoha's walls while wearing bibs. After creating clones earlier in the day, I said, time to show them how it's done, and established communication with them. All units, looks like Orochimaru is launching an attack. Literally, giant snakes are attacking. Suna and Otto Shinobi are fighting Konoha's. Gaara's freaking out. Looks like he's heading for the forest, and that idiot Sasuke is chasing after him. Beck and Gargan units lay low and only fight if necessary. Fisk unit, upon completion of the mission, engage enemy units as necessary. I'll handle the grunt work. Otto questioned, exactly how are you going to do this? Like this, I answered, at my best. As the gauntlets withdrew from my body, the nanites inside of me transformed into wings made of metallic feathers that extended from a pack that had developed on my back, which created an anti-gravity field, to my hands, which were now covered in metal talons, to finish the vulture motif. One final touch, I said, putting my hands together to make the well-known hand sign, Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Multiple shadow clone technique. My position in the cloud my technique created caused the city below to momentarily go dark. As my cloud shadow covered the ground, those below would see the skies full of winged replicas of me when the cloud dispersed. My clones and I yelled, secret technique, Tomb's Flock no Jutsu, as we started our group descent on the city. Notes from the author. Auf Wiedersehen v, which means, goodbye fathers, in English, should have been the final chapter. I'm not sure why exactly, but I find it really appealing that Naruto would occasionally use German in his speech. The increase in Naruto's intelligence is comparable to what happened to Reginald Barclay in the excellent episode The Nth Degree of Star Trek. The Next Generation one. Highly recommend watching it at some point. The title of this chapter is derived from a section of the Weezer song, Beverly Hills, for some reason that seemed appropriate. Lastly, I have a new poll that is directly related to this story up on my profile. For the sound, Suna invasion in Not Your Friendly Neighborhood Uzumaki, which would you prefer to see? There are 3 options. Short chapters that highlight a single battle, medium-length chapters that highlight a few fights, or lengthy chapters that cover several fights. In essence, the wait time increases with the length of the chapter. Months later. The outcome. I believe that voters would prefer a chapter that is medium in length, 19 votes, similar to this one with 14 votes. Long chapters came in second. Can you imagine how long the wait would have been if I had written a lot more? Short chapters with 2 votes complete the pack in a far third place. Until we meet again, my faithful readers, this is my response to the common joke in many Naruto fanfictions that everyone but Naruto is aware of Hinata's crush now for the Omake. Omake. Their generation's best scientific brains. Naruto was exposed to a lot of new concepts during his training weeks, and he received answers to a lot of his own questions. This is one of those questions. What I don't understand is why Hinata always turns so red around me and then sometimes passes out, said Naruto. Do either of you have an idea? After exchanging brief glances before returning to their charge, Alistair said, I'm not sure, but we'll ask the others and be back in a few minutes with an answer. The 2 villains vanished and then reappeared inside the computer's main processor in a conference room filled with all of the minds that had been scanned and imprisoned. Ones and zeros can't actually sit on chairs, but for aesthetic effect, use that. Gentlemen, the problem before us is this. Why does the girl called Hinata turn red around Naruto? Otto declared as he pulled out an empty chair and took a seat. As everyone searched their minds for the solution, the room fell silent. Naruto, Naruto. Wake up! Alistair yelled close to Naruto's head, causing him to leap from his bed. With a mix of agitated anxiety and drowsiness, Naruto exclaimed, What happened? Are we under attack? As Otto explained, we've come up with an answer to your question. Naruto asked, rubbing his eyes drowsily, what question? The one about Hinata and turning red. Alistair introduced the topic. Naruto glanced at his father's clock before turning back to his own. It's 4 in the morning. I asked you that over 16 hours ago. It was a complicated issue, Otto clarified. The intricacies of the mind of a pubescent female is not something that we are intimately familiar with, so we had to extrapolate from pre-existing data. And we would need further testing to confirm our hypothesis, but we believe that Hinata is allergic to you. Naruto says, that's good to know, and yawns. Well, see you in the morning. Alistair cheerfully said, good night, and he and Otto left the room. In their core, all shinobi, regardless of their place of birth, shared traits like self-improvement training and some degree of elemental control. The wrath of the cages, losing a loved one in some way, platypuses, platypi, plata people, whatever the plural is, don't ask. It's a long story that goes all the way back to the reason behind the Second Shinobi World War. Finally, facing an opponent with the ability to fly rounded out the list of fears that shinobi also shared no matter which side of the battle they were on. Every ninja in the village of Konoha saw an army of flying ninja appear out of nowhere and descend upon them on this particular day, and they all said the same thing, $, ampersand, %, exclamation point. As hundreds and hundreds of Naruto Octavius Smythes filled the air, the skies over Konoha grew darker. The swarm moved silently down, dividing into groups of 3 or 4 to face the problems in the village. Before delving too deeply into the narrative, I, the author, narrator, does this qualify as self-insertion into a fanfic, had better clarify a crucial plot point that will make things much easier to comprehend. Among all the jutsu in the world, Kage Bushin no Jutsu, literally, the shadow clone technique, is distinct for 2 reasons. It is classified as a B-rank supplementary technique and included in Konoha's forbidden scroll of sealing because the user's brain must assimilate the memories of dispelled clones. The jutsu causes extreme mental strain. Firstly, it is extremely demanding on the user's chakra supply, requiring half of the user's current reserves for the bare minimum of results. The shadow clones have the same memories, knowledge, and experiences as the original, which is what sets the Kage Bushin apart from all the other clone techniques, with the exception of a somewhat submissive streak toward the original and the fact that the Kage Bushin would disintegrate if struck with enough force. There is no distinction between the creator and the creation. Looking back, this reminds me a lot of Dr. Doom's relationship with his Doombots. As the hordes of Naruto charged into battle, many of them used their claws to tackle their opponents, their wings to slash, or their gauntlet blasts or metal tentacles to strike. Anko Mitarashi wasn't enjoying her day. First, she was out of maple syrup for the pancakes she ate for breakfast. Second, Kurenai hadn't paid her the money she owed Anko because she lost the bet about Hinata failing the Chunin exam. Sure, the nearly dying part was sad, but $100 is $100. Third, she couldn't proctor or watch the Chunin exam finals because the 3rd Hokage had ordered her to protect some stupid nobleman's servants that he didn't bring with him to the arena. Fourth, the servants were perverts who kept staring at her chest and ass. Fifth, she missed the first half of As the Kunai Twirls, because the servants just had to finish watching. The amount is correct. Sixth, a giant 3-headed snake burst through the city wall, destroying Konoha's only TV transmitter just as Ryu was about to find out if Hoshi was really his son or if Hikari had cheated on him with his brother Mikoto. Seventh, one of the servants had the gall to grab her ass as she jumped out the window. Eighth, the ass grab caused her to have a wedgie in the underwear that most people in Konoha didn't believe she actually wore. Ninth, the 2 auto ninja she was currently fighting were perverts who kept staring at her chest. And rounding out the list at 10th, the ninjas were actually skilled enough to prevent her from killing them. Come on baby, we don't need to fight, said the first auto ninja. Yeah, we'll show you a good time instead, his partner said. Oh? Anko asked sharply with a kunai flourish that nearly struck the ninja pair. Anko punctuated her statement. Well, if you want to show me a good time, why don't you come closer and let me see your blood? Both auto ninjas charged at the purple-haired Jonin, telling him, you had your chance. If you aren't going to give up, we're just going to have to take what we want. However, they were taken by surprise when 2 orange-clad ninjas fell out of the sky and struck them. The auto ninja's head thudded against the wall as the first Naruto tackled him, causing his body to go limp. Anko smirked slightly and said, well, if it's not my favorite loudmouth, since when can you fly? The second sound ninja screamed before either Naruto could react, as the second Naruto's talons found exposed areas of skin to grab hold of. The sound ninja's voice became quieter as the second original piece of technology created by Adrian Toombs turned on. His body was being forced to age, causing his hair to turn gray, his muscles and bones to weaken, and his taut skin to sag and wrinkle as the Naruto who was clinging to the elderly ninja felt the energy from his victim pour into himself. Anko and Naruto gaped in disbelief. A nearby Suna ninja yelled, "Futon! Daitapa, wind style! Great breakthrough!" as he unleashed a blast of wind that threw the Naruto that drained youth into himself into a wall. Embedding him in it, the purple-haired Jonin charged at the Suna ninja, kicking him away after stabbed him in one of the body's 8 zones with a kunai. The other Naruto squatted next to his counterpart and remarked, "That's odd." "What?" Anko inquired as he approached him. The downed Naruto began to stir, but was interrupted by a kunai that appeared out of nowhere and struck the clone in the shoulder, causing it to vanish in a cloud of smoke. This clone was thrown into a wall and he didn't pop. The knowledge of their fallen comrades suddenly seeped into the minds of all the Narutos in the village, causing them to blink simultaneously. All the Narutos understood that the foreign chakra acts as a shield, but only the one closest to Anko actually said it. Aloud, the Narutos altered their fighting tactics throughout the village, beginning to approach their adversaries in order to deplete them of their chakra, life force, and/or youth, if you will. Tamari, who had stayed behind to give her brother time to escape Sasuke Uchiha, was not particularly pleased. She was determined to waste as much of the Uchiha's chakra as she could because she was low on it. Unfortunately, she had fallen into the Uchiha's trap despite her superior jutsu and strategic choice to create sand to give herself a greater advantage. The Uchiha had booby-trapped the log he used his substitution on with an exploding tag. Using a straightforward Kawarimi no jutsu, she was thrown backward by the ensuing explosion, which hurt her back and caused her to cough up blood before she blacked out. The Uchiha had discarded her as unworthy of his time and left after her brother. When Tamari regained consciousness, she realized that 1. Her back was hurting, and 2. Her combat gear had seen better days. Her kimono was severely burned and had several holes torn by Sasuke's explosive tag and fire jutsu. The idea of being in the middle of enemy territory hurt and semi-naked did not appeal to Tamari, despite the fact that she was anything but prudish and had occasionally used her developing feminine figure to divert opponents. The kunoichi-wielding fan glanced around, assessing her location and the duration of her absence. Not much time had passed because the sun was still in about the same spot. The sounds of combat seemed to be coming from the same direction and distance as when she was knocked out, and the trench coat on the metal branch was still there. "Wait." A somewhat familiar voice said, "I thought you could use this," as it cautiously peered out from behind the tree and turned to face Tamari. "I'd offer you some aspirin or other pain reliever, but I doubt you'd accept." Tamari answered, "Why would I? You're teammates with the Uchiha." Naruto paused and raised his head slightly as though he was hearing something. "Yeah, but frankly he's an ass that gets too much credit in life. Is having 2 large sand appendages normal for your brother?" "Oh no, Gaara's seal was weakened, he's transforming into Shukaku." Naruto asked, genuinely perplexed. "Who's Shukaku?" Tamari clarified, "The one-tailed demon inside Gaara." Naruto said, "Well crap." As he reviewed the new details, Naruto tossed his trench coat at the blonde kunoichi, who cautiously caught it. "Come on, put this on and let's go to your brother." With suspiciously narrowed eyes, Tamari questioned, "Why should I put this on?" Naruto shrugged. "I just thought you'd prefer not to let everybody know what color underwear you're wearing," he said. Before hastily donning the trench coat, Tamari blushed unconsciously at the idea that Naruto knew that. In a sudden burst of speed, both ninja vanished and began racing through the treetops towards Gaara, with Naruto trailing Tamari just in case her injuries caught up to her. "Come on, we'd better move fast." "So," Naruto said, breaking the quiet, "do you always color coordinate your underwear with your sash?" In Adrain Tomb's world, a Nazi general named Hermann Göring once said, "He who controls the skies controls the war." This statement influenced Tomb's fighting style, which in turn influenced Naruto's flying fighting style. 10 Narutos flew in the direction of the 3-headed snake before splitting into 3 groups of 3 and a lone Naruto who soared above the battlefield. The mutated serpent was too preoccupied with attempting to devour the Konoha shinobi using jutsu to attack its body to notice the team approaching. Naruto stated, "Team 1, you're clear, start your run," from above. The relevant Narutos confirmed and launched a risky aerial ballet against serpent-style Cerberus. Attack, attract attention, break away as the next group attacks. Repeat until the lone Naruto makes his move. Team 2, once Team 1 has struck their target, start your run. Team 3, wait until Team 2 makes contact, then start your attack. The straightforward yet powerful pattern started and continued until Naruto, who was alone, saw his opening and descended from the sky with ease, surpassing terminal velocity. Before hitting the snake, Naruto swapped out his wings for the Shocker's gauntlets in a single, fluid motion. He then made a direct hit to the center head's skull, causing it to burst open with a loud, sickening crack. The center head of the beast was either killed or knocked out by the vibrations from the shocker's gauntlets entering its exposed brain. In any case, the center head and neck collapsed to the ground, paralyzing the rest of the body and providing the other Narutos with the opportunity to swarm the body together. On both sides of the battle, Shinobi paused and gazed at the fallen serpent. When the legs of the Naruto on the downed head failed, he collapsed onto his butt. Wincing when he saw that several of his handbones were broken, Naruto carefully withdrew his right fist from the snake's skull. He would likely become the first shinobi to defeat a powerful summon with just one hand, so even though he was in pain, it was a good pain. The wounded blonde grinned, let out a sigh, and turned to face the other two heads that were ecstatic about his accomplishment. Kachiyose. Yatai Kuzushi no Jutsu. Summoning. Food card destroyer technique. Was yelled by a familiar voice, but this accomplishment and feeling were abruptly literally overshadowed. Unfortunately, one of the toad's front arms landed on the downed head and onto the injured blonde. A huge cloud of smoke appeared directly over the paralyzed snake, and a massive dual sword-wielding toad dropped out of the smoke and landed on the snake's heart, crushing and instantly killing the trio. The remaining Narutos would repeat Naruto's final words. I hate that man. After what seemed like hours, Temari and Naruto reached a tree branch with a view of a battleground after racing as quickly as her body would allow toward her possessed brother. Temari's brother Gaara was surrounded by clones of Naruto in a variety of battle gear, including wings, gauntlets, tentacles, and more. With the exception of his legs, Gaara's body had nearly entirely changed into that of a tanuki. Raccoon dog. Due to the protective sand, the sandy redhead hurled his Suna Shuriken, Sand Shuriken, at the horde of Naruto that were pursuing him from every angle. The newly arrived Naruto looked around the battlefield, taking in everything and making remarks. Oh look, it's my ass of a teammate who seems to be struggling to get back to his feet, must be weighed down by all those weird flame tattoos. And there's Sakura, somehow trapped against a tree by a sandclaw. And look, Naruto said, turning his head to face neither of his teammates. There's something so interesting that I'll be distracted long enough for an attractive blonde to hit somebody's ass of a teammate with her heavy metal fan, potentially causing brain damage. After a few seconds of staring at the intriguing object. Too subtle? He commented without saying anything. Temari jerked her thumb in Sasuke's direction, revealing that he was flat on his face with a lump protruding from the back of his head. Yep, I was right, beautiful and dangerous. Temari blushed uncontrollably at his compliment once more. But the moment was cut short when one of Gaara's Suna Shuriken struck the tree they were standing on so forcefully that it fell over before returning their attention to the fight. The two blondes leapt out of the tree and into the next one. The possessed redhead was surrounded by Naruto's army of clones, some of whom managed to avoid his frenzied swings while others were not so fortunate. This both pleased and infuriated Gaara, who thought he had killed his adversary until it exploded. A few of the clones approached Gaara and swung their tentacles at her, but Gaara's sand reacted, catching the clone as it hit and pulling it in so one of her arms could slap it. Taking advantage of this diversion, other clones struck Gaara's body with their shocker gauntlets, shattering the hardened portions of his armor and causing his sand defense to charge in to fix it. Hundreds of air blasts were directed at Gaara simultaneously by a small platoon of clones who were cooperating to fire their gauntlets. The combined attack pushed Gaara backward, the pressure waves warping his armor. I will not lose to someone like you, Gaara yelled, his final words turning into an inhuman roar that destroyed a quarter of the clones as the ground exploded beneath him. As the dust settled, everyone who was still awake gaped in disbelief at the monster in front of them. It appeared as though an artist had carved a huge tanuki out of stone, covered it in bizarre black markings, and infused it with all the evil that humanity had ever experienced before giving it life. Temari mumbled, it finally emerged, perfect possession, Shukaku has fully emerged. How can I fight him? Inquired the Naruto next to her. My father has golden sand that he can force into Shukaku's sand to stop it, Temari clarified. Temari simply shook her head in response to the question, I don't suppose you've got any on you right now? Great, Naruto uttered, his teeth clenched. Sabakukyu. The coffin of crushing sand exploded out of Shukaku's body, seizing a quarter of Naruto's forces and crushing them before they could respond. Even a second platoon of Naruto's firing shockers air blasts only briefly cracked Shukaku's front leg as the remaining clones fought valiantly to defeat the enormous beast. As his comrades were being destroyed, Naruto paced back and forth beside Temari, desperately searching his enhanced brain for a solution. Okay, think. What stops sand water? I need a massive amount of water, except there isn't any out here. What else? I know that there are some people who heat the sand of Suna's deserts for glass making, Temari said. Yeah, but how am I going to make a fire that hot unless, fulgurite? What? Naruto gave a brief explanation, saying, fulgurite is a natural form of glass that forms whenever lightning strikes sand. Do you know any lightning jutsu? Naruto put his right hand to his ear and turned on his radio, saying, no, but I've got something better. All units, we need some backup fighting Gaara. Get over here as fast as possible. Everybody fighting Gaara, switch shocker gauntlets to mode 3. Let's bring some energy to this fight. Ryusa Bakuryu. Quicksand waterfall flow. Shukaku yelled as he forcefully planted his front paws on the ground, sending a wave of sand flying in all directions. The Naruto gathered in the forest swiftly switched their gauntlet modes. Fire. Each clone's gauntlets unleashed a strong energy burst that took the shape of a beam with rings of energy surrounding it. The land was engulfed in a flash of light in a matter of seconds after sand and energy collided. The outcome was startling, and it ended as swiftly as it had begun, with the exception of the area where the clones had gathered to fight. The sand wave destroyed everything it came into contact with, turning a large area of forest into a miniature desert. The clones were momentarily stunned by the enormous glass sculpture that shimmered in the sunlight. When the Naruto in command yelled, hit him again, the clone Narutos regained their composure and unleashed another surge of energy at the sand monster. What are you waiting for? Applause. As pieces of Shukaku's body were superheated into glass, they swiftly fell and shattered to the forest floor below, causing him to howl in rage. When the massive sand beast struck a group of clones with its tail, it felt the full force of the clones on the ground as well as multiple groups of reinforcements that had flown in from Konoha, the shocker gauntlet wearing ones riding on the backs of the vulture-winged ones. As it descended on the clones, the sand tail glowed a fiery red. The sand demon suffered a great deal as its once powerful, enormous tail was reduced to a shadow of its former self. The majority of its substance had been turned into glass, which cooled on the forest floor below. The tail destroyed the clones it struck with a loud boom. Temari gasped slightly at the sight of the enormous glass tail as well as the amazing surge of heat that was more intense than Suna's worst days. However, the roaring beast's head caught her attention. Naruto! Exclaimed Temari. Gaara is dozing off on the head of the demon. Hell of a time to fall asleep, replied the most recent metal-armed master. Temari clarified, no, Gaara doesn't sleep, stressing the word, doesn't. He thinks Shukaku eats him piece by piece while he sleeps, Temari said. Great, so we're dealing with an insomniac on top of everything. He must have used the Tanuki Niri no Jutsu, feigning sleep technique. It's a technique that puts Gaara to sleep and gives Shukaku total control. That's why it's been attacking so wildly. If you can wake Gaara up, Shukaku's body will collapse. Over the radio, one of Naruto's clones said, Sir, there are 25 of us in the air waiting for your orders. Air Squadron, Naruto commanded into his radio. Gaara is on top of the sand demon's head. Go after him. If we wake him up, the demon will collapse. The recently arrived clones, who were still using their vulture wings, dove down to hit the redhead and rouse him. Sadly, Shukaku's living sand pulled all of the flying doubles who approached Gaara out of the air and into Shukaku's body, where the pressure inside crushed them. It's no good, sir, one of the clones informed Naruto near Temari via radio. Every time one of us gets close, the sand destroys them. Any ideas? Why won't you all just die? Exclaimed Shukaku as he watched his clones either blasted the large waves that were released, turning them into glass before they could strike, or dodged the mad Tanuki's tiny waves of sand that tore apart the landscape. Naruto pondered. The flyers can't get to Gaara because the Shukaku can sense them coming with its sand. We've got to get rid of the sand. Our blasters can take away chunks of the armor, but he just regenerates. We destroyed its tail, but lost a lot of fighters, and he's recreating his tail as we speak. He's got to have a limited amount of sand. We just have to destroy more sand than he can move to restore, but we can't, unless... Naruto's eyes widened as every component clicked into the correct position. All units, maximum power to the gauntlets, fire at will. Temari yelled, no, you could kill him. As everything came together in her mind as well, Gaara might be vaporized or, worse, trapped in a superheated glass cocoon that would suffocate and cook him to death if even one of those energy blasts struck him directly. The pigtailed wind mistress swung her fan in a desperate attempt to stop the army by stopping its commander, but her fear and hatred of the demon inside her brother were overcome by a wave of sisterly love. Unfortunately, Temari's heart overruled her head, preventing her from recognizing that her target had 4 extra arms. Her arms immobilized her before striking her firmly but gently enough to knock her down to the branch of the tree she was on without seriously injuring the kunoichi. The arms chose that moment to defend their owner by wrapping around the fan. Naruto gave her a sidelong glance as the arms released her, Diverting his attention from the enormous pillars of energy that protruded from the ground, the Shukaku bellowed louder than ever before as its body was being liquefied against its will after these pillars struck it harder than any of their predecessors. Naruto said in a whisper, "I'm sorry," and then vanished. Temari wanted to yell at him, wanted her body to follow her instructions and work, and wanted anything but what was taking place. Temari was momentarily blinded when Shukaku vanished in a single, enormous flash of light, and her eyes began to well up with tears of sorrow and agony. After a brief moment, Temari opened her eyes and saw a very different scene than the one she had just left. Once tall and proud, Naruto's clone army was now all sitting or kneeling in exhaustion and staring up at the distorted glass statue that had once been the one-tailed Tanuki's body. Temari's gaze was abruptly drawn to the edge of the battlefield, where a number of Narutos had just vanished into thin air. As Temari searched for the reason behind the abrupt devastation of the clones, she saw what she was searching for. A young man in a black bodysuit moving quickly through the army while holding a broken wooden puppet, removing the clones in front of him. Temari was perplexed as to why Kankuro would begin attacking the clones, and occasionally she realized that if his puppet Karasu had failed to destroy them, he would be shocked with his own fists. She was perplexed until she plotted his course and saw a lone clone standing erect and gazing down at a redhead filled with fresh fear and hope. Temari pushed her body against resistance, retrieved her fan from where the tentacles had set it next to her, and then leapt from the tree on her now open fan. She swiftly descended to the forest floor and delivered a devastating kick to the closest clone, instantly dispelling it in a cloud of smoke. Just a second ago, when the lightning was blazing, Naruto muttered to himself, "This is a stupid idea," as he soared through the air to attack Gaara. Temari had attacked first, so even though he felt a little bad about having to attack her, he might still unintentionally kill Gaara. In order to get to Gaara more quickly, Naruto retracted his Octavius arms back into himself and released his wings after leaping into the air with the accuracy that only a great deal of practice can provide. The blonde braced himself as glass shards flew off the howling Tanuki, some of which hit him and sliced through the bodysuit, leaving thin red streaks. A few moments later, Naruto discovered that the sand surrounding him was turning into glass at a startling rate, and he was standing on the feet of the sleeping Gaara. Naruto repeated, "Really stupid idea," as he used a flying tackle to ram Gaara in the stomach as hard as he could. He then latched onto the redhead and dislodged him, sending them both hurtling to the ground below. "No!" roared Shukaku in desperation and rage, its body ironically losing its integrity as it was melted into glass, which made it harder than before. Shukaku collapsed and solidified at the same time after saying, "It's not fair, I just got out again." The result was a huge glass statue of a melting Tanuki. After stopping their assault, the clone army fell to their knees or butts. They were fortunate that they hadn't poofed out yet, because sustaining the beams for that long and with that much intensity had depleted their chakra reserves. When Gaara came to, he was lying on the ground, looking up at Naruto Uzu. No, Octavius Smythe, he corrected himself, with arms at his sides, each covered in feathers or metal blades, and the distorted glass statue of Shukaku behind him. Naruto was merely staring at him. Gaara frantically thought to himself, "Shukaku was defeated, I lost, I couldn't kill him, so that means I will cease to exist." He then began to strain his muscles as he crawled backward away from his adversary. "I will not cease to exist. I won't. I refuse." Naruto began to approach him while continuing to look at Gaara, causing him to experience a level of fear and panic that had never been experienced before. "Do you know what the difference is between the two of us, Gaara? Don't come near me." In Gaara's ears, Naruto's voice was loud and mocking before it abruptly lowered to a whisper. "I have defeated my demon, while you have become a slave to yours. Kyuubi promised me nothing, and I never gave the Kyuubi anything. On the other hand, you killed whenever your mother wanted you to, and I can only assume that by mother, you meant old glassface behind me. You obeyed its commands, like a slave would a master. I, on the other hand, ordered my demon to obey me, and when it denied my commands I took revenge, and now, the Kyuubi no Kitsune feared demon fox that toppled mountains with a swish of its tails, that destroyed thousands of lives, that killed the famed fourth Hokage is no more, nothing but a bad memory. I destroyed it. I ripped its mind apart from its body and left nothing but an empty shell for me to draw power from. I am my demon's master. You are your demon's slave." "Stop it," Gaara moaned. His head pounding. Naruto turned his head slightly to the side and peered out the corner of his eye as memories of destroyed clones began to seep in. "Stay away. It's ironic how alike we are. Both of us deep down are scared little boys looking for love. The difference is that I had nothing and became desperate for any sort of love, to the point where I became what I thought people wanted me to be and denied what I thought I should be, to the point of burying away all my hate. And then suddenly, I stumbled into a family, one who accepts the real me that I would have denied and the me that I let others see and lets me decide what is worth keeping and discarding about myself. You on the other hand, have had everything I wanted in a family from the very beginning, and yet you have taken such painstaking measures as to drive away anyone who would care about you if given the chance. Although, he added looking back at Gaara and to Gaara's confusion smiling at him, I do not believe that they have abandoned you as much as you have them. Your brother and sister are exhausted and yet they're giving everything they've got to fight my entire army, for you muttering about how they have to protect you, their brother. Gaara retorted, they're just doing it for my father, he wouldn't want his weapon to die unless it was because he ordered it to happen. Possible, but unlikely. Tamari is crying as she fights. Loyalty to the state rarely evokes such emotion. It's more likely that at least Tamari still really cares about you deep down, despite what your demon and probably your father would have her believe. Now it's time to choose Gaara. Will you live to kill at the whims of your demon and die today? Or will you kill your demon's will and live for yourself and possibly the beautiful blonde that's crying over you? For the first time, Gaara found himself thinking about his sister without feeling angry or indifferent. That's my sister you're talking about, he said. Naruto continued to smile as he withdrew his wings and extended his hand to Gaara. Sounds like you've made the right choice, he said with Naruto's assistance. The sand wielder accepted the offered hand and got to his feet after releasing their hands. Naruto retreated a short distance in the direction of Konoha. Tamari and Kankuro finally broke through the army's defenses and positioned themselves between their brother and the boy who might still hurt him. Come seek me out and perhaps we can find a way to help you defeat that raccoon dog that tortures you so. Take one more step toward our brother and it will be your last. Kankuro glared at Naruto, threatening. Gaara said to them, Tamari, Kankuro, stand down, it's over. We don't have to fight him anymore. Kankuro cautiously asked, keeping his gaze fixed on Naruto, you sure about this, Gaara? Yes, Gaara replied, we are no longer enemies. I don't even know why we are fighting in the first place. Naruto replied, well, aside from the whole invading with Orochimaru's band of mutated idiots, I suppose a better question would be, why are you guys working with them? When Tamari casually revealed Suna's full invasion strategy, Kankuro gave her a perplexed look. Suna's economy is in trouble, Tamari explained. Most of the people who would hire us for missions are instead hiring from Konoha. We lose money which will cause us to lose power, and eventually we will fall from our place among the 5 great shinobi nations. Naruto moaned, so at politics, I hate politics, as brief passages from the Kingpin's digital copy played back in his head before being interrupted by a report from one of the Narutos who was still in the village. Naruto returned his full focus to the 3 Suna genins staring at him and said, all Narutos, Orochimaru is in full retreat. Try and stop him or any of his minions if you can. Looks like the war is over. Take Gaara and get out of here as fast as you can. Gaara, think about what we talked about and what other people are offering you. I will, Smythe. Gaara nodded slightly in response. Tamari said, but there's one more very important thing you must know, as she approached Naruto and stopped just inches from his face. Naruto questioned, perplexed as to why she had approached so closely. What's that? Tamari grinned, and then Naruto felt her fist strike him squarely in the stomach, doubling him over with the strength that only an enraged woman could have. That's for leaving me on the tree branch, and this, she said calmly, cupping Naruto's left cheek in her right hand and giving him a quick peck on his other cheek. That's for everything else you did right, especially saving my brother. Tamari turned and walked back toward her brothers, and Naruto could swear that he would have seen Tamari swaying her hips as she went if his coat hadn't blocked his view. As he fought to regain his full height, Naruto remarked, you don't have to keep reminding me you're dangerous, Tamari. I never doubted it for a moment. Tamari merely glanced over her shoulder and grinned before she and her brothers bolted back toward Suna, saying, oh, and you can keep the coat, it looks better on you anyway. They traveled in silence until they were well out of Naruto's line of sight, at which point Gaara said to his siblings the hardest thing to say honestly in any language, I'm sorry. Naruto, meanwhile, sent a message via radio after observing the Suna trio's departing forms. All Narutos. Gaara isn't a threat anymore. If you see him, let him and his siblings go in peace and don't be too rough with the guys from Suna. It's not their fault they got dragged into this fight. Oh, and I gave Tamari our code to wear. Over the radio, a dozen Narutos simultaneously exclaimed, what? 2 men were waiting in a tiny stadium side room while they listened to the sounds of fighting outside. The first was a middle-aged man with pale blonde hair, and the second was a middle-aged man with stocky brown hair. They both carried briefcases that seemed to be made of gold. The fighting abruptly stopped, and there were 3 knocks on the door when he saw 2 Narutos on the other side. The pale blonde man who had opened the door grinned. One of the Narutos smirked back at the 2 men inside and said, Mr. Beck, Mr. Gargan, your path has been cleared, if you'll follow us, please. All right, said the blonde who answered Beck, but Gargan and I found something interesting. Gargan pointed to two rectangular boxes in the room's corner whose lids had been cracked by a punch. Yeah, he continued. The boss'll be very interested in getting his hands on these babies. Author's note. I'm not sure if any of you noticed, but by defeating Tamari hand-to-hand and then having Tamari kick his butt, respectively, I have actually made Sasuke both stronger and weaker than his canon self. For those of you who don't understand the title's allusion, the Metallica song, Enter Sandman, is relevant to Gaara. I have the live and Ludwigshafen version. This leads me to believe that Gaara and Master of Puppets could be suitable for Konkuro. Does anyone know of a Metallica song that would work for Tamari, at least in terms of title? I researched the glass-making process on Wikipedia. Indeed, I am aware that I employed a technique that Gaara did not employ until much later, but who's to say Shukaku was unaware of these methods and Gaara simply stole them? I've written another Doctor Who one-shot and an Atop the Fourth Wall one-shot, both of which I believe are fairly good, so please take a moment to review this chapter. We appreciate everyone who has already reviewed and will do so in the future. You've been waiting for this moment. The Omake, no, 2-0 makes, inspired by J. Largent's review of the previous chapter, in which he remarks, I can actually see Naruto playing Flight of the Valkyries while doing this. Let's see what happens next. Omake. The damage caused by J. Largent and Air Force of Naruto in vulture armor descended from the skies, poised for battle, their eyes steely and determined, their armor gleaming in the sky, their musical instruments starting the opening chords of Wagner's Flight of the Valkyries. Wait, what? What's that in the sky? It's a bunch of kites. No, it's a flock of large birds. No, it's a flying orchestra. Ah! Smash! A crash! Poof! It's a falling orchestra. Run for your lives. Naruto Octavius Smythe and his clones then grabbed musical instruments and fell out of the sky, driving off Suna and Otto's invading forces. It turns out that everything and everyone could be stopped by the Four Violet Flames battle encampment technique. Aside from musical instruments, a pair of tubas and a couple of cellos knocked out Orochimaru's Sound 4, and the original Naruto, clutching a pipe organ, crushed the Snake Sanin, who died. Omake. The work of J. Largent V2 and Air Force of Naruto's wearing vulture armor descended from the sky, prepared for battle. Their eyes were steely and resolute, their armor was gleaming in the sky, and the opening notes of Wagner's Flight of the Valkyries were being played on the onboard speakers. But wait, what? During their dive, one of the clones said to the original Naruto, "Hey boss?" To which Naruto replied, "Kind of in the middle of something." This is Flight of the Valkyries, right? Yeah. And Valkyries were warrior women of Norse legend, right? Yeah. So, wouldn't it make more sense if it was a bunch of women fighting the bad guys? I suppose from a technical standpoint, but that would assume. However, the original Naruto was interrupted as the clone communicated with all of the other Naruto clones. A few seconds later, the clones all yelled in unison, Oryoke no Jutsu. A second cloud of smoke obscured the sky before the original Naruto flew downward, followed by a couple thousand blonde girls who were naked save for the smoke covering their private areas and the wings coming from their arms, as is customary in anime. Every male who looked up reacted by being violently flung backward by their own bloody nose. For some reason, Suna and Otto only brought two females to the fight, so it was left to the Konoha Kunoichi and to Yuya and Temari's fighting skills. The Snake Sanin's body flew back into the battle encampment before the Sound 4 reacted and was destroyed, and Konoha ultimately prevailed handily. Orochimaru's body turned out to be, let's say, a bat for the opposing team. The Sound 4 then responded, and 3, or 3.5, depending on how you count Sakin and Yukon. The old perverted Hokage, Sarutobi, broke his hip after flying backwards, falling off one roof level and landing on another. Deep down, all shinobi are the same, regardless of where they were born. For example, they all train to become better versions of themselves. This sounds very familiar. Why? Because we've returned to the same moment that marked the beginning of the previous chapter. As Naruto's engaged Suna and Otto's shinobi forces throughout the city, the sounds of battle reverberated throughout the surrounding buildings. 2 Naruto's and 2 Otto's cannon fodder, that is, ninja, squared off in the market area while his opponent was getting ready to attack. One of the ninja, who was proficient at throwing kunai, was holding back his mechanized adversaries. Unfortunately, the two were too preoccupied with the Naruto in front of them to notice that a third had silently landed behind them. Before the Otto ninja could launch a kunai, one of Naruto's third tendrils caught his arm. Naruto then delivered a vibrating punch to the ninja's jaw, shattering his jawbone and rendering him unconscious. When his partner was able to shoot a fireball, one of the Narutos countered with an air punch, which caused the ball to split into multiple smaller fires that struck and ignited some of the nearby stands. The startled ninja was hit so hard by the air punch that he flew through the door of a nearby hardware store. The three Narutos entered the store after their adversary. The hardware store exploded a few minutes after it was broken into, scattering debris all around. Orochimaru would have to acknowledge in his heart that the invasion of Konoha would ultimately mean nothing to him. This is not to imply that the Snake Sanin would not care about winning or losing. Rather, it means that Konoha's eventual destiny was insignificant compared to the situation he was in at the time. The Snake Sanin was standing directly in front of Sarutobi Hiruzen, his former leader, sensei, friend, and, in the part of him that still felt like a human, father figure. However, this was the way things had to be for them both. Sarutobi would always respect individual rights, and Orochimaru would always prioritize his own improvement. Even though their battle was serious, Orochimaru couldn't help but smile while engaging in combat with his former sensei. It wasn't new that Orochimaru liked to make fun of Sarutobi's advanced age and the fact that he wasn't as strong or quick as he once was. The fact that this life-or-death battle was unfolding like one of their numerous spars over the years. Attack, counterattack, banter, and then showcasing their amazing skills, like Sarutobi's combination of Doden, Doryuden and Doden. Doryu Taiga are Orochimaru's ninjas using 4 Violet Flames battle encampment, made Orochimaru smile. In a matter of seconds, Orochimaru would unleash the potentially most potent technique found in the Forbidden Scroll, which he had copied along with several other jutsu in case he ever needed something similar. The Naruto flock swarmed through Konoha, killing as many invaders as they could, either alone or in groups as they pursued Gaara or the giant snakes. One Naruto circled the purple cube while examining it with his HUD as he flew back toward the arena. Okay, Naruto thought as he read the information he had gathered. The cube is made of the chakra of the 4 individuals in the corners, that much is obvious, but they found a way to harmonize their chakra. Odd, I didn't think that was possible, but the consistency of the chakra keeps changing almost as if the chakra is moving. That's it. The chakra moves from user to user, harmonizing the individual's chakra with the collective's almost instantaneously, and this harmonized chakra is moving so fast and violently underneath the surface that any foreign chakra that touches it, either through a jutsu or a person, is instantly destroyed. The cube's surface or through it deeper with each loop. So, the chakra is constantly moving around the walls and ceiling, so where is it weak? Wait, it needs all 4 producing and moving chakra equally to maintain the field, so I should take out one of them, but which one? Thin guy with the gray hair, large guy with the mohawk, scowling girl with the hat, or the guy with 6 arms that makes him look like a spy? We have a winner. Naruto crashed into the roof between his target and the Anbu who were looking on. Uzumaki, said the center Anbu, leave now and help Konoha. We have the situation under control. Naruto said, and a bang-up job you're doing, without turning to face the Anbu, but I am aiding Konoha by saving the old man. Naruto then started to move in the direction of his target. Uzumaki, I order you, get away from here. The name is Octavius Smythe and I don't answer to you, Naruto said, turning around and glaring at the Anbu. Now if you want to be useful, then either get down there and help Kakashi and Guy fight or shut up and be ready to attack when this barrier goes down. Naruto then turned around and walked to stand face to face with the 6-armed ninja. Less than a month on the job and I find my own Spider-Man to fight, so tell me, Spider-Man, can you do whatever a spider can? Spin a web any size? Do you catch your enemies just like flies? To you, is life a great demand? The spider-like ninja snarled, what the hell are you talking about? Sorry, just a little ditty about another Spider-Man. My family knew my name is Naruto Octavius Smythe. What is yours? Kidomaru said, looking suspiciously at Naruto. My name is Kidomaru. Well then, Kidomaru, would you mind taking this barrier down? Hell no. Didn't think so, Naruto said, retracting his wings and talons to form Dr. Octopus's tentacles and Shocker's gauntlets. I just thought I'd be polite and ask before I hurt you. Naruto fired a concentrated blast of energy at the roof where the shield's corner rested, creating a huge hole. Jokingly, it didn't work, Kidomaru said. Naruto said pleasantly, no, it did work, and then he walked forward and dropped through the hole. After a few seconds of silence, Kidomaru heard a thud and then a crack, and then one of Naruto's tentacles suddenly exploded through the roof's tiles and grabbed Kidomaru by the throat as fast as it had appeared. The tentacles withdrew, dragging Kidomaru to the ground. Along with it, this set off a series of events that shattered the roof beneath his feet, causing him to fall through it. Kidomaru reappeared as abruptly as he had vanished, soaring out of the hole Naruto had initially created, landing just outside the arena wall, and crashing to the ground around the stadium. The blonde, mechanized shinobi made another hole in the barrier's roof and landed close to the third Hokage as the spider-like shinobi crashed outside. "Hi old man, is this a private fight or can anybody join in?" asked Naruto. Sarutobi yelled, "Naruto, what are you doing here? I came to ask if you wanted to go to Ichiraku's for a bowl of ramen or six. What's it look like? I'm here to help you," sarcastically responded Naruto. "Your Anbu are just standing there doing jack squat except telling people to not help you as they twiddle their thumbs." Sarutobi said, "You shouldn't have come here, Naruto. Like I could let you fight him alone." Naruto retorted. The big man with the orange mohawk, Jirobo, glanced over his shoulder at Orochimaru as the two engaged in a light argument. The barrier pulsed angrily as sections grew wider and others thinned to the point where gaps would form, especially on the roof. "Lord Orochimaru," Jirobo grunted just loud enough for his master to hear, "we can't keep this up much longer." When Orochimaru flew through hand signals, two coffins rose from the ground. "Hold on as long as possible," he ordered. "Looks like I'll have to speed up our reunion." Sarutobi said, "1 and 2, out loud with the Shuriken Kage Bushin no Jutsu." Sarutobi threw a shuriken as quickly as he could and flew through his own hand signals, turning one shuriken into nearly 1,000. Naruto charged after them, saying, "No, it can't be." The two coffins were struck and lodged by the numerous shuriken shortly after the impact. Naruto used his gauntlets to ram the coffin as hard as he could, shattering the wood and knocking it over after bouncing off the coffin. Naruto used his tentacles to grab hold of the coffin, closing the opening lid and pulling it in his direction so he could punch it too, putting his right fist briefly in the wood. Sarutobi yelled, "Naruto, behind you!" A third coffin, labeled 4, for some reason, rose behind Naruto as he turned his head on their own initiative. The tentacles grabbed the coffin's sides and launched it skyward after removing the coffin with his right fist. Naruto launched an energy blast with his left fist, striking the coffin and knocking it against one of the barrier walls, setting the box on fire with purple flames. Naruto thought, "I'm enjoying this for some reason." Before the coffin was consumed by flames, Sarutobi could swear he saw the back of a man with long blonde hair wearing a white jacket as he peered at it out of the corner of his eye. Orochimaru yelled, "No," with a mixture of shock, annoyance, and rage his meticulously planned plans. Persuading the Rice daimyo to grant him permission to establish his own village. Establishing Otto's actual village and all of its secret bunkers. Locating and persuading individuals with special skills, unaffiliated ninja clans, and missing and rouge ninja to move to Otto, or in certain situations, simply abducting them. Successfully holding a covert meeting with the Kazekage and persuading him that an invasion of Konoha would be the only way to raise Suna's status in the world. Removing the Kazekage and replacing him, which would be nearly impossible without the Kazekage's abilities. Planning the successful invasion of the village by arranging all of his and Suna's ninja into attack patterns. Discovering the genetic material of the 3 previous Hokages and mastering the extremely challenging Edo Tensei Jutsu. It's all for nothing now, no, Orochimaru thought. Not for nothing, the renowned Kusanagi blade that he had concealed within himself was swiftly regurgitated by the snake Sanin, who then flaunted it. "Let's settle this." Orochimaru rushed forward, blade ready to cut into his sensei's flesh, but Naruto's air blast stopped him in his tracks, almost hitting him in the gut. Orochimaru concentrated on Sarutobi, who had used Orochimaru's distraction to call forth the Monkey King Enma and have him change into his adamantine staff form. "Sound 4, attack that blonde," he commanded. As soon as his master gave the order, Jirobo charged at Naruto and used his Arhat style of taijutsu to deliver a punch. Unfortunately, this put him in the path of an attack by the strange gray-haired ninja, who also attacked Naruto with a punch that turned into 3 fists attacking at once. Naruto leapt backward, narrowly avoiding the punch in response to the impending danger. Naruto's tentacles instinctively coiled themselves between his body and the approaching fists, absorbing the blows before uncoiling and pushing the gray-haired ninja and Naruto apart in opposing directions. Naruto asked himself, "Do I hear music?" because he thought he heard a flute playing, but his thoughts were interrupted when a shadow passed over his head. When Naruto turned to face the shadow, he was startled to see that it belonged to a huge humanoid wearing a black jumpsuit and smashing down on the still-in-air Naruto with a huge club. On its own, Number 6 responded by grabbing onto a roof tile to Naruto's left and dragging him away from the approaching assailant. The giant wearing the jumpsuit hit the roof, shattering multiple tiles and creating a hole in the roof. Naruto was briefly relieved that he would not be crushed by the club before he saw another enormous humanoid snarling at him. The landing clawed humanoid lunged at Naruto to cut him open after he narrowly avoided its downward slash at the same time. Naruto leapt backward and fired an air blast at the charging humanoid with Shocker's gauntlets, sending it back the way it had come and Naruto farther away. But because of his backward flight, Naruto was directly in line for a kick from the third humanoid wearing a straitjacket. As the bound humanoid used the momentum of its landing to push itself toward Naruto and attack with a flurry of kicks that Naruto could only barely avoid by continuously moving backward, another of Naruto's tentacles reacted. This time removing their wielder from danger for a brief moment. Number 6 suddenly sprang at the bound kicker, encircling the approaching ankle before hurling the kicker toward one of its fellow humanoids with a quick crack of its whip-like body. Jirobo launched a clothesline-like attack that would have severed Naruto's head had he not jumped out of the way, just as the kicking humanoid was released. For several minutes, the pattern persisted. One of Naruto's opponents would attack, forcing him to dodge into the path of another opponent's attack, forcing Naruto to dodge into yet another opponent's attack, in an apparently never-ending cycle of barely avoiding blows. As the fight went on, Naruto noticed three things. 1. The orange and gray-haired opponents appeared to have stopped in the middle of the fight to get tattoos on their faces and arms. 2. The orange and gray-haired fighters had become stronger since getting their tattoos, connecting a few times with glancing blows. And 3. The music Naruto heard during the fight came from the red-haired girl, who was still in her starting point, away from the fight, and who was somehow covered in tattoos. As Naruto took a half step back to avoid the next attack, the fighting abruptly stopped, but he discovered that the majority of his foot only touched air. "It's been fun, trash," Jirobo teasingly said. "Now give up and we won't hurt you too badly." "Sounds good," Naruto said, "but how about this? You give up and we won't hurt you too badly." "We?" jeered Jirobo. "You and what army? You don't know how long I've been waiting for somebody to ask me that." Naruto laughed in response before anyone could respond. Naruto suddenly materialized and struck Jirobo's right side of the face with a powerful, gauntleted left jab, knocking the larger man to the ground. It was open season for the Auto Shinobi, as dozens of Narutos descended from the sky to attack, and Jirobo's crash to the ground was like a starter's pistol. The Ichiraku ramen stand was constructed in a prime location for business, right on the main road that connects the Hokage's Tower and Konoha's main gate. Road travelers could quickly locate the stand and stop in for a taste of Konoha's best ramen. Unfortunately, the invaders found it easy to target this prime business location when two invaders rushed into the Ichiraku's stand after eluding Konoha's shinobi. With an evil smile and a hungry expression, one of the two said, "Well, look what we've got here," adding, "food and something to entertain ourselves with." Tucci held a pair of cleavers in his hands and gave a stern look. "Stay back," he said. The other one teasingly said, "Or what, old man? You'll make us some ramen?" His partner moved forward, and the elderly chef was faster than someone his age should have been before the auto ninja could block. He slashed the attacker across the face, causing the ninja to stagger back, clutching his face. "Now you'll get it, old man." The ninja, who had not been wounded, swore. A tentacle with metal claws caught the throats of both invaders, halting their attack. "Nobody touches my friends," Naruto snarled as his tentacles threw them over his shoulder into the path of another Naruto air blast after slamming the two together with a sickening crack. At the same time, a dozen furious Narutos from the neighborhood gathered around the two and demonstrated to them what it meant to be beaten to within an inch of their life. Ayame joyfully exclaimed, "Naruto," as she flung herself onto her savior and gave him a fierce hug. "It's okay, Ayame," Naruto reassured her, giving her a gentle pat on the back. "Nobody tries to harm my precious people and gets away with it." "Thank you, Naruto," Tucci said politely, "but if you don't mind my asking, how do you get so big and muscular?" Ayame also had a question, but she was too preoccupied with being reassured by her friend's unexpectedly strong physique to ask. "All the benefits of your ramen diet came in at once," Naruto chuckled. "Now don't worry, I'm going to stay here and protect you too." "Naruto," Tucci said, "don't worry about us. You've got to protect Konoha." Naruto answered, "It'll be fine." Tucci wanted to argue, but after glancing at his daughter, he realized that there would be no safer place than next to their best client until the invasion was over. There are a lot of me's out there right now. However, this was not the case for the three Suna ninja who had cornered Naruto in an alley. As the three of them prepared for battle, the lead Suna ninja said, "It's been fun, kid, but this is the end of the line. Any last words?" "Yeah," said Naruto. "I'm just distracting you so she can stab you." "What?" one of the Suna ninja asked as a flurry of kunai suddenly emerged from the alley's shadows, impaling and killing two of the unwary Suna ninjas. A purple-haired woman materialized in front of the third ninja as he turned to face the new foe. This was followed by an excruciatingly strong stabbing pain in his crotch, which nearly instantly knocked him out. Naruto said, "You know, technically it's not stabbing if you throw the kunai," as he approached his partner who was crouched. And was it really necessary to use a snake to bite him in the crotch? Nope, Anko cheerfully replied, getting up and grinning at her partner. What's that make the score? Naruto grabbed Anko with his right arm and jerked her behind him while he used his left to fire an electric shocker blast at an auto ninja at the other end of the alley who was about to throw his own kunai. 6 to you, 5 to me, and 8 team-up knockouts, he said. The sound ninja was thrown backward into a wall across the road when the blast struck him squarely in the chest, and that makes it 6 to both of us. Anko put her head on Naruto's shoulder, pushed her ample possessions into his back, and encircled him with her arms. You know, for a life or death struggle, this is the most fun I've had in a while. Even more fun than licking my cheek before the second stage? Yep, although I think the only way this could be more fun is if I got to lick up your blood. Naruto declined Anko's request and replied, come on Anko, let's go find some more cannon fodder for us to beat up. Anko exclaimed, yay, as she released Naruto and actually skipped down the alley after laughing at Anko's antics. Naruto kicked the head of a Suna ninja who was about to stand up, knocking him unconscious. Once more Naruto grinned and said to himself, 5 to 6 to 9, before pursuing Anko. In the meantime, the battle on the stadium's roof was not going well for the invading forces. It had begun as a one-on-one altercation between a student and a teacher, then evolved into a 2-on-1 altercation, a 1-on-1 altercation, a 6-on-1 altercation, and finally a massive battle royal with the Hokage and a flock of Narutos on one team and Orochimaru, 3 members of his Sound 4, and 3 giants. Sarutobi and Orochimaru kept fighting, letting their partners concentrate on their opponent's partners while concentrating nearly entirely on one another. However, this battle was only the focal point of the chaos occurring on the roof. Elsewhere, the fighting was haphazard and chaotic, with Naruto's attacking one opponent before retreating to attack another instead of attacking Naruto and making him defensive. The Sound Ninja were now being forced to defend themselves by his clones instead. Unfortunately, instead of merely dodging as he had been forced to do, the Sound Ninja were counter-attacking, and successfully, judging by the occasional cloud of smoke that appeared after a clone exploded. Did that person with the gray hair suddenly grow out of his back? Okay, these guys are definitely better than the ones in the street, but then again, if they were protecting Orochimaru, they'd have to be. The lead Naruto asked himself as he processed the memory of one of the popped clones. Naruto sighed as a clone popped after Jirobo crushed its rib cage with a powerful knee to the gut. I need to get out of here quickly. New plan. Switch to talons and let's try draining these ninjas of their chakra, piece by piece if we have to. He commanded over his radio, all units on the roof. Yes, sir. In response, the Naruto flock immediately sprang into action, eschewing their shocker gauntlets in favor of vulture talons. The 3 giant humanoids were attacked by Naruto clones, who dived or lunged at them in groups, grabbing onto them with their talons and consuming them as quickly as they could. The giants attacked the clones wildly in a desperate attempt to remove the leeches from their chakra until they were completely exhausted, and the 3 giants burst into clouds of smoke. After seeing her summons defeated, Tayuya snarled and barely avoided being struck by one of Naruto's talons. What the hell, you bastard? Are you attempting to get a feel? The girls here are aware of your diminutive size. As the talon began to drain her chakra, Tayuya's next words were interrupted when one of the Narutos managed to latch onto her shoulder, directly on top of the source of her curse seal. This caused her to glow. Think of the Spider-Man cartoon from the 1990s. The process came to an end when Naruto let Tayuya collapse as the telltale glow of absorption faded away. The Narutos surrounding her gazed at her inquisitively. You shouldn't knock it, the Naruto who was latching onto her joked. One touch from me can really change a person. I'm no expert, one Naruto said, but I thought she was supposed to turn old and wrinkly. The Naruto turned to face Tayuya again, her appearance unchanged from when she was building the barrier. Yes, and what happened to her tattoo? The final word was met with a cry of agony as the Naruto, who was using up all of her chakra, collapsed to his knees and gripped his stomach. How are you? The downed clone immediately roared as if his skin were beginning to crack as the same black marks that were on Tayuya erupted from the collar of his attire and covered all of his exposed skin. The first Naruto asked as he took a step toward his comrade in pain. The now tattooed Naruto stopped roaring and hurried to his feet. Never better, tattooed Naruto, henceforth referred to as Tattoo, retorted, his eyes glimmering wildly. In fact, this is the best I've ever felt in my life. More of this chakra is what I need. Tattoo grabbed onto Tayuya's arms with his talons, activating the absorption process again, but nothing happened. Why isn't it working? Why isn't she an old wrinkled bitch? The Tattoo said, releasing and relatching onto Tayuya without any effect. I'm not sure, the first Naruto said, giving his brother a suspicious look. Our talons work by drawing life force or chakra out of the target. I know that nonsense, damn it. What's the point? Tattoo yelled, becoming increasingly irate. The only way the procedure wouldn't work is if she had a different chakra system, because the depletion of their life force causes them to temporarily age and the talons are programmed with a limit to prevent killing the target. Where would someone store a distinct chakra system? An additional Naruto inquired. The tattoo. What if it's a seal instead of a tattoo? Exclaimed the first Naruto. What on earth are you discussing? Tattoo yelled or inquired. Seals work similarly to circuits. Their shape dictates their purpose, and they use chakra in the same way that a circuit uses electricity, the first Naruto clarified. Perhaps the tattoo is actually a seal for a great deal of chakra, and when it spreads out, it becomes its own chakra network. The second, another Naruto said, a storage seal for chakra, so it's a lot like our seal. So this chakra is present in any bastard who has one of those tattoos? With his gaze shifting to follow the other two surviving Sound 4 members as they repelled Naruto's, Tattoo posed the question. Yes. I only need to know that. Eager to absorb more chakra, Tattoo sprinted in the direction of the obese ninja with tattoos. He's not acting right, the second Naruto remarked, observing the tattooed one fleeing. Why? Perhaps that cursed seal resembles our seal more than we think? Do you believe that the chakra has a mind? I don't know of any chakra-storing seals that don't involve a consciousness. Then we'd better be cautious. Go back to the original plan for all of the units on the roof don't absorb their chakra. It will confuse you. The second Naruto gives an order over the radio. In a matter of seconds, Tattoo got close to Jirobo, roughly shoving aside any Narutos that stood in his way. Hey you fat sack of crap. Where the hell did you and your damn friends get your ink? Yelled Tattoo. How did you get Lord Orochimaru's mark on you? Jirobo asked, his eyes widening in shock as he spun around to face the voice that swore like Tayuya after dispelling the nearest Naruto with a viscous knee to the chin and a punch to the face. Oh, that's Orochimaru's mark? I may have absorbed his chakra. Tattoo made fun of the fact that I seem to have more important things to deal with than you, Tubby. You must go through me first if you wish to battle Lord Orochimaru, Jirobo yelled. Tattoo responded, fine by me, lard ball, I could use a pick-me-up, and then charged again. Jirobo raised his arm to block a Naruto swipe and countered with a knee to the gut, causing Tattoo to stagger backward a couple of steps while clutching his gut. Jirobo took advantage of the blonde's distracted state by attempting a palm thrust that would have removed Tattoo's head, but Tattoo moved his head out of the way at the last second. Jirobo's hand passed by Tattoo's head without incident, but was then caught by one of the tentacles. The tentacle then used Jirobo's momentum to throw the big man over his shoulder, slamming him into the ground without releasing him. Jirobo recovered quickly, jumping to his feet and grabbing onto the tentacle. Jirobo pulled on the tentacle with a great tug, knocking Tattoo off his feet and sending him flying directly toward Jirobo's other fist. Tattoo straightened out less than a foot away and used a talon to catch Jirobo's punching arm. Ah! With a last moan, Jirobo's tattoo vanished and the big man passed out as his chakra began to drain. Tattoo used his other talon to grab onto Jirobo's neck to hasten the absorption process. I defeated the bastard in a matter of seconds after the damn clones were unable to handle him. This chakra is incredible. Tattoo doubled over again as a new wave of power rushed into him, and more tattoos covered him, moving like snake or a chain made of triangles. Tattoo jumped to his feet quicker than he did last time. His face looked more tattoo than flesh. Time to fight the head bastard. Eagerly searching for his prey, Tattoo said. Orochimaru always did have weird ideas for storing weapons, Sarutobi thought to himself as he took a few steps back before expanding King Enma's adamantium staff form. Orochimaru used the Kusanagi's edge to block the attack, causing Enma to scream in a mixture of pain and rage. Sarutobi grimaced as he narrowly avoided being cut by the famed Kusanagi blade that Orochimaru had apparently found and was also keeping hidden inside of his stomach. Orochimaru swiftly moved forward, getting inside Sarutobi's guard while his staff and summon were distracted. He then delivered a viscous kick to the gut, winding the Hokage and possibly cracking several ribs, causing Sarutobi to stumble backward while holding onto his ribs. You've grown older, have you not? I have never witnessed you exert so much effort, Orochimaru said. Grinning at his frail former sensei, Orochimaru raised his right hand to his face, and with a swift tug and a ripping sound like cloth being torn, the snake Sanin tore his face off, revealing the face of a young girl beneath it. It's so pitiful, you know, even you, he who was hailed as the god of the shinobi, cannot defeat old age. Sarutobi's mind was having trouble comprehending what he was seeing until he recalled the night his misbehaving pupil departed Konoha and the atrocities Orochimaru had left behind. You finished that kinjutsu, didn't you? Yes, this immortality jutsu allows my soul to connect to this world forever, essentially reincarnating myself by moving my soul into a new body and gaining possession of it, Orochimaru said. Laughing at the expression on his opponent's face, my only motivation for disguising myself as my former self was to arouse your nostalgia for the past. Almost oblivious to the battles going on around them, the two fighters kept their eyes fixed on one another. Orochimaru remarked, "It's sad really, you've grown old and destitute. Here, in the ruins of your village, you will perish, a village that will shortly give me a new, younger body. You desire the body of Sasuke Uchiha." Sarutobi became aware of this. "Well, after he gets older," Orochimaru acknowledged, "but I did like our last conversation," Sensei Orochimaru said. "As thanks for all you've done for me over the years, I think I shall let you die." As he spoke, the young girl's stolen skin paled and rippled, transforming into an exact replica of the Sannin's original face, looking into the face you knew best. "Orochimaru!" Tattoo shouted, drawing the Sannin's and Hokage's attention, both looking at the newly arrived Naruto in surprise. "Is this power yours?" "Naruto? What happened to you?" inquired Sarutobi. "This is between me and the snake," Tattoo yelled. "Silence up, old man." The snake Sannin laughed and said, "Kukuku, I don't know how you got my seal, Naruto, but it is mine." "It contains your chakra, right?" Orochimaru reluctantly replied, "Yes." As he was taken aback by the supposedly dead last's insight, however, he saw the expression in the tattooed Naruto's eyes and knew it was the same expression that anyone who desires power has. "If you join me, I can give you all the power you could want," he said. "I could even mark you personally." "Naruto, don't believe him. He will deceive you and take advantage of your body," Sarutobi yelled. Another Naruto, standing behind Sarutobi, joked, "Great, you get a tattoo and suddenly only freaky people are interested in your body. I want all of your power, not just a portion of it," Tattoo proclaimed. The tattooed Naruto lunged at Orochimaru with that yell, his tentacles straining to grab hold of the snake so that the talons could follow suit. "What's happening?" Sarutobi asked the Naruto, who had shifted to stand next to him, while keeping his gaze fixed on his former pupil's battle. Naruto responded, "Somehow, absorbing a tattoo has caused that clone to go crazy." "Absorbed? How?" "When he applied it to one of his guards, the tattoos vanished from them and appeared on the clone. However, we have a piece of technology that functions similarly to that chakra leeching jutsu he is now pursuing Orochimaru after absorbing the tattoos of another guard. I have a jutsu that might stop Orochimaru, but I need a few minutes to prepare. Can you distract him?" Sarutobi commanded Naruto as Tattoo caught Naruto's knee with a tentacle and bent it in an unnatural way. Orochimaru yelled at him in response. Orochimaru unleashed a stream of snakes from one arm, forcing Tattoo to leap backward to avoid taking a snake to the jugular. Tattoo transformed one of his talons into the gauntlet form and fired off an air blast to keep Orochimaru off balance. When Naruto said, "Somehow I don't think that'll be a problem," Sarutobi nodded and started to form the appropriate hand signals. When Enma in his staff saw the first signs Sarutobi was using, his eyes widened in surprise and he exclaimed, "Sarutobi, you can't be serious. That's too risky jutsu." Sarutobi commanded, "Be quiet, Enma, I have no other option." After a short struggle, Tattoo charged the unsteady Sannin and managed to pin his arms to his torso. "Very good, Naruto," Orochimaru chuckled, ignoring the pain in his ribs, "but there's something about snakes you should know." Orochimaru opened his mouth wide, and what appeared to be fingers reached out and latched onto the sides of his mouth. The leader Otto threw back his head as the fingers turned into hands, but as soon as the hands appeared, they vanished in a big black blur that emerged from Orochimaru's mouth and landed feet away, revealing another Orochimaru who was uncut and bruised. "They can shed their skin." "Neat trick," Tattoo said, tossing Orochimaru's shed skin. Orochimaru's hands swiftly passed through the hand signals, saying, "So's this one, futon. Daitapa. Wind release. Great breakthrough." Orochimaru's hand erupted in a wind similar to the one that flung Naruto through the forest of death, sending Tattoo hurtling through the air. Tattoo's tentacles clung to the roof, preventing him from flying off of it. Orochimaru had to cancel his attack after Tattoo yelled, "Now try one of my tricks." He converted both gauntlets and unleashed bursts of energy from both arms, landing on the roof between the fallen boxes Orochimaru had summoned earlier. His tentacles wrapped around the two boxes and threw them at the Sannin, and Orochimaru barely avoided both projectiles, which flew off the roof and crashed into one of the private viewing boxes in the stadium below. Orochimaru's stream of fire sent Tattoo scrambling out of the way. A middle-aged man with brown hair and a middle-aged man with pale blonde hair peered down at the two boxes that smashed through the room where they were waiting to be picked up. "So these are the boxes Orochimaru was so interested in summoning," the tall blonde said, examining the package. The blonde nodded as he carefully opened one of the lids, and the brunette asked, "Should we look inside?" Both men's eyes widened in shock as they peered inside. The tall blonde remarked, "Well, this is an interesting development, isn't it, Mr. Gargan?" The brunette replied, "Yes, it is Mr. Beck. Mr. Beck proposed, let's get these somewhere safe for the boss." "Agreed," Mr. Gargan said, placing a finger to his ear. "This is Gargan. Beck and I are moving, requesting pickup." Orochimaru thought, "I hate to admit it, but the brat is a talented fighter, despite his enraged state. This is actually a lot like sparring with Jiraiya when we were younger, only the brat is better," Orochimaru said, leaning his upper body backward to avoid a swing by one of Tato's tentacles. "And with that body I could perform even more experiments, handle dangerous substances easily." Orochimaru's mind processed all of the things he could do with Naruto's body, thinking, maybe even restrain Jugo physically. I must possess his power. Tattoo used a vibrating punch to strike Orochimaru in the stomach after the snake Sannin allowed him to get close suddenly. Orochimaru turned into mud, briefly trapping Tattoo's arm before reappearing behind the tattooed one and biting into his neck. "Now I've got. Wait, this isn't right," Orochimaru thought, realized before he released his bite, jumping back, and spitting out a foul taste. "You're a clone." Orochimaru sidestepped the blast and charged in close, swinging the Kusanagi to deflect the tentacles, ending by coming in close and bearing down on Tattoo's head with a vicious downward slash. Tattoo blocked with his free vibrating gauntlet, somehow knocking the sword away. Snakes exploded out of Orochimaru's opposite sleeve. Tattoo used his other hand to knock out the snakes. Orochimaru's sword arm recovered first and released the most dangerous snake in his possession, which bit right into Tattoo's jugular. Tattoo brought his first arm back to his throat to grab onto the snake and crush it with his vibrating fist. "Kukuku," Orochimaru laughed, "you are full of surprises, aren't you, Naruto?" Orochimaru's mind raced through all the ways the clone could have survived. The snake Sannin's eyes widened in surprise as the tattooed Naruto didn't pop after being bitten. But Orochimaru did notice that several of the tattoos had faded away. "Your chakra is mine," Tattoo yelled, lunging at Orochimaru once more, and the two fought until Tattoo managed to use his tentacles to restrain the Sannin's arms and legs. His gauntlets glowed as he brought them toward the Sannin's face, and he saw one of Orochimaru's hands move out of the corner of his eye. Then, just inches from a meal of chakra, Tattoo's body was racked with excruciating pain. Tattoo looked down and saw the blade of the Kusanagi protruding from his chest, and he screamed in anger. Orochimaru let out a breath of relief, but it was cut short when two Naruto's new tentacles grabbed his hands, arms, and legs. One of them yelled, "Now, old man." Orochimaru turned his head just in time to see Sarutobi leaping at him, his right hand glowing a sickly purple. "No!" exclaimed Orochimaru, who had recognized the forbidden scroll technique and was actually in a panic as he fought to break free. Sarutobi yelled, "Doku no Sutairu, Chakura Kuchikukan. Poison style. Chakra destroyer." As something flew past his face, barely missing him but burying itself in one of the Naruto's stomachs, dispelling him and leaving only an arrow behind. The Auto leader instantly reacted, remembering Kusanagi to his hand, and in one motion stabbed the other Naruto in the stomach, dispelling him as well and releasing Orochimaru. The pale Sannin leapt out of Sarutobi's path as the elderly Hokage willed the purple glow forward, and as Orochimaru dodged, the glow lanced forward, missing the body but glancing off his left elbow. Orochimaru said, "I didn't think you'd be willing to use that technique," as a burning sensation began to develop in his arm. "To stop you, I'm more than willing to use forbidden jutsu," Sarutobi retorted, the purple energy dissipating. "You should have let me kill you, sensei," Orochimaru chided. "Your death would have been far less painful." Before the Sannin could respond, Sarutobi heard another whizzing sound approaching. Before he could react, a pulse of air rushed past him, colliding with the whizzing and turning it into a thud. "I could say the same," Sarutobi retorted. "Spider-Man is aiming arrows at you, old man." Orochimaru used this small diversion to form hand signs and release a stream of flames at the Hokage, and Sarutobi dodged the flames by using Enma as a pole vault. A new Naruto behind Orochimaru with a gauntlet raised shouted. Sarutobi turned, keeping his body facing Orochimaru while allowing him to see the six-armed ninja on the roof's edge. "Damn it," Orochimaru swore, "if I keep fighting, I might lose my arm entirely. I must escape. Sound 4 to me." Orochimaru cancelled his attack because the burning in his elbow had gotten worse and was beginning to numb the appendage. Naruto was about to attack the Sannin when he was suddenly reminded by memories of nearby defeated clones that Orochimaru's gray-haired guard had somehow woken up his teammates, and all three were en route. The Sound Four quickly encircled their leader. Retreat. Orochimaru angrily commanded. All 5 of Otto's ninjas leapt into the air. With Kidomaru at the rear, 2 still-winged Narutos pursued them, but were ensnared in a web from Kidomaru's mouth, causing them to fall to the ground and vanish in a cloud of smoke at the same moment as the Sound Four and Orochimaru vanished. As he ran to Sarutobi's side, Naruto commanded into his radio, "All Narutos, Orochimaru is in full retreat. Try and stop him or any of his minions if you can." "You okay, old man?" "Yeah," Sarutobi said, flexing his right hand's fingers, "but I wouldn't want to go through this every day." Sarutobi turned to face the village, observing the smoke rising from certain places. "Good job, Naruto." Sarutobi grinned and placed his left hand on Naruto's shoulder. "All Narutos, Gaara isn't a threat anymore," was announced over the radio before Naruto could respond. "Let him and his siblings go in peace if you see them. Additionally, don't be too hard on the Tsunagais. They weren't at fault for being drawn into this altercation. Oh, and I let Temari wear our coat." "What?" Several dozen Narutos, including the one on the roof, simultaneously asked over the radio. "What took place?" Sarutobi inquired. "Apparently, I found out that Suna was involved in this. However, he didn't give an explanation and I liked my trench coat, which I gave away. I think the least I can do after helping save me is buy you a new coat," said Sarutobi, laughing at the glimpse of the former Naruto. "But for now, what matters is that the village is secure." The elderly and bruised Hokage sat behind his desk as Sarutobi and Naruto entered his office. "All right, Naruto," Sarutobi started, "tell me how you got your amazing new powers." Naruto remained silent, his eyes wandering around the office while his odd new limbs swayed almost mesmerizingly, their claw-like tips pointing in various directions. Sarutobi inquired. When Naruto finally turned to face the Hokage, he grinned and said, "Sorry, old man, I thought you said we were going to talk alone." "We are. So, who are the other 4 individuals who are lingering in your office?" As Sarutobi glanced around, he saw that Naruto was referring to the Anbu that were stationed in his office and that he was pointing at one of them with each of his claws. "You were able to identify them? How?" Sarutobi inquired. With a broader smile, Naruto answered, "I'm just that damn awesome." "Anbu." Sarutobi gave the order. Dismissed. The Hokage was confronted by 4 of the masked shinobi. The person on the right said, "Sir, with all due respect, Uzumaki." Naruto clarified, "Octavius Smythe, instead, is an unknown at this time," the Anbu concluded. "I trust Naruto as much as I trust any of you Anbu," Sarutobi clarified. "Which might not be the smartest thing considering the do-nothings that were on the roof with you," said Naruto. "As for you 4, as I said before, dismissed," Sarutobi said, meeting Naruto's gaze once more. "They will have a chance to explain their actions or lack thereof." "But sir," rejected. With a harsh tone and a hint of menace in his voice, the Hokage said, and the Anbu hurriedly marched out of the office, shutting the door behind them. Sarutobi grinned and gestured toward a chair, which Naruto took, a little angrier. "And I think you'd need to get a new carpet," Naruto joked. "Now then, tell me your story, Naruto." Naruto started. "Long story short, I made a mistake trusting the perverted toad. He made me use up all of my chakra and threw me down a chasm. I barely made it through hitting the bottom." "How?" "I used a mass of shadow clones as a pillow." "Only you could pull that off," declared Sarutobi, who was still grinning. "So, did the Kyuubi grant you the chakra necessary for survival?" "No, the chakra was the last of mine, and the fox wanted to die because of something about being by itself. In any case, I managed to get into the river and floated downstream for a while before Octavius and Smythe rescued me and helped me recover." Sarutobi said softly and sorrowfully, "I thought you had died," his smile gone. "Why? It doesn't, old man," Naruto said gravely. "Trust is a two-way street. You wanted my story, now tell me yours." Sarutobi chose to respond after noticing Naruto's line of reasoning. "Jiraiya was in my office days ago when I asked him how your training was going. Are you capable of doing that? Kakashi has taught me jack squat, and I wish you had checked up months ago." "Naruto, I could still investigate that for you in any case. Jiraiya was apologizing when the top toad showed up in my office and informed him that your name had been removed from the summoners list that could only have occurred if you had passed away." "I did die," Naruto murmured. "What?" Startled, Sarutobi asked. "After I fell to the bottom of the chasm, my heart stopped beating for a few minutes. I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for my new family. I'd like to meet them and thank them for saving you. That's kind of impossible right now. The only way you could get to them is with my new skills." "Are they able to come here?" Sarutobi started to say. "No, they wouldn't leave their home," Naruto interrupted, saying, And no, I won't tell you why, it's not my place to say. Naruto, I hate to say it but there's a chance they could be a threat to Konoha. And Konoha could be a threat to them, Naruto said sarcastically. To be honest, after everything they've done for me, I'm more protective of them. Just because they saved your life doesn't mean they deserve your complete loyalty. Just because I live here doesn't mean Konoha deserves my complete loyalty, said Naruto. How are you able to say that? Startled, Sarutobi inquired. Naruto went to the window and peered down at the village, saying, I suppose in a way I've been thinking about that for a while. Do you know what the safest place in Konoha was during the invasion? Ichiraku's ramen stand, Sarutobi said, silently shaking his head. The clones out there have been providing me with intelligence. Many of them moved toward the stand and the blocks around it hell. Many of them wanted to form a ring of steel, which was actually proposed. I now understand that the only people who give me motivation to continue fighting for Konoha are them, you, and Iruka. The others are simply not worth it. Naruto turned around and looked directly into Sarutobi's eyes, saying, Naruto, please give it time, things will change. With each word, Naruto's voice began to grow louder, but only because of today, because they saw that I have power that could be useful to Konoha. But any praise they give me now will never balance the years that they glared at me in hatred because the fourth Hokage couldn't come up with a better plan than sticking the fox in a newborn. Naruto sighed. Then his voice returned to normal volume. So what happens now with the summoning? Sarutobi was momentarily taken aback by the sudden shift in subject, but he soon recovered. The connection is severed once the name on the contract turns black. Unless Jiraiya or one of the Toads gives you the contract to sign again, you won't be able to call forth Toads in the future. Very well, I shall pass. I'd rather avoid more connections with my two-time would-be executioner. Twice. 1. I died after he threw me over the cliff. 2. I was standing on the three-headed snake when he crushed me with a toad. Sarutobi said, I'm sure the second time was an accident. How can a shadow clone be distinguished from the original? Naruto inquired. Well, you can, Naruto interrupted, without touching it in any way. Sarutobi stumbled over his response, then said, without a dojutsu or sensitive sensor abilities, you can't. Yes, the toad sage must have noticed me on the snake's head because he called forth a toad directly above it and me. Have you ever had a multi-story toad land on top of you? I do, and we wouldn't be here discussing it if that had killed every Naruto in a single blow. With a tone of disgust, Naruto concluded, so you can understand if I'd rather have nothing to do with him. Jiraiya, Sarutobi thought bitterly, you idiot, your godson wants nothing to do with you. He then said out loud, I can't promise you'll never cross paths because you may end up working together in the future. Naruto cocked his head slightly and said, I should go. One of the clones is calling. As long as there's someone there I can depend on and trust to watch my back, I'll manage. Is there a problem? No, Naruto grinned. He wants help moving the remains of the giant glass tanuki. I don't think it will fit in your apartment, said Sarutobi with a laugh. Both men laughed at the picture this statement created. I know. That's why he's trying to persuade the others to take a wall off the building to fit it in. Do you mind if I fly out of here? Sarutobi said, go ahead. As Naruto's arms began to sprout wings, Naruto then opened one of the room's large windows and stepped out onto the ledge. Later, old man. Sarutobi hurried to the window and peered out just in time to see Naruto rising up and flying past his window. The elderly Hokage watched Naruto fade into the distance before returning to his desk. Naruto exclaimed joyfully as he leapt off the ledge. Sarutobi remarked to himself, Naruto, you're going to be amazing. What on earth am I going to get you for a coat, though? Something involving a fox? He doesn't want to be reminded of it. In my opinion, perhaps something similar to his father's. No, I don't believe we should promote our relationship. Perhaps Sarutobi's train of thought was derailed by a terrible spasm of pain in the fingers of his right hand, reminding him of his recent fight. I'm getting too old for this job. As he flew over Konoha, Naruto saw that the entire village had survived, despite the fact that the area close to the snake's entry hole and a large portion of the downtown area where the other Narutos fought had been severely damaged or destroyed and would need to be rebuilt. The missing section of wall would also need to be replaced unless the council decided to put another gate there. In any case, government bureaucracy would probably mean that the hole would remain there for some time. The buzzcut blonde dove into the chasm. Jiraiya threw him down, following the same path he took the first time. But without the fear of death, Naruto eventually reached the base spaceship and entered his new home, where he immediately collided with another Naruto. Leaving Naruto glided over the village walls and the surrounding forests, certain that he couldn't be tracked until he eventually returned to the chasm. The Naruto who was leaving said, oh, there you are, we've been waiting for you. Smythe turned to see the two Narutos enter the room and said, Good. All of the Narutos are here, come on. Our Vaders are waiting. Both Narutos saw the mass of Narutos working under Smythe's supervision for now. Dispel. We'll get back to work later. All that was left was a single Naruto lying on the ground after the group of Narutos vanished in puffs of smoke. You'd think that with a couple hundred copies of me walking around the base, at least one of us would have put up a poster or something to make the ceiling less drab. I woke up to the sterile, metallic gray ceiling above my brain chair recovery station. Unfortunately, there aren't any of those on board because the space agency forbade astronauts from hanging posters of bikini-clad women or images of dogs playing poker, I heard Smythe explain. Plus, that sort of thing wasn't exactly a priority when we added our own tech to the stolen shuttle. I turned to face my family, who were all gathered and appeared worried. We were wondering when you'd get up, Smythe said. How much time did I spend away? Almost an hour, Smythe replied. It seems that even with our assistance, your mind wasn't prepared to process so many distinct memory sets. Yeah, the past few hours are kind of a blur. I'm not sure which memories are mine and which are a clone's. You'd think that the original memories would be the strongest, but the sheer mass of memories has overwhelmed them, said Smythe. Yeah. I paused, processing the thoughts and feelings that had wandered from myself, and then I grinned as I experienced the phantom feelings of Ayame, Tamari, and Anko. Smythe said, remember which one you were? No, but I know which ones I'd rather have been. Of all people, the shocker asked, a girl kissed you, right? One kissed, one hugged, and one kind of draped herself on her back, I said. Shocker teased, wiping fake tears from the eye holes of his mask. Gentlemen, our little boy's all grown up and discovering girls, which made me flush and made my family start laughing and grinning. As my family kept laughing, I got up from the chair and said, you're just jealous that I've got girls throwing themselves at me and you're stuck here with these recycle bin rejects, I said. So what was I up to? Sorting our new supplies, counting the money, that sort of thing. Otto said the details were filled in as he spoke by the memories connected to these occasions in the stores that would frequently overcharge me. It seems like a few of myselves played Robin Hood. It's not a clear 3 times the price for a third the quality, but a few extra cents per item adds up. Sadly, it appears that all of these stores were destroyed by the different explosives that the enemy ninjas brought with them. Isn't it shame? The money was obtained through a combination of betting at the Chunin exams and loose bills found in the stores. It appears that grab the cash register was one of the standard evacuation procedures for the stores. I created 3 unique clones, Beck, Gargan, and Fisk, named after Mysterio, Scorpion, and the Kingpin, respectively, before I showed up for my fight. Every clone had a crucial task. Take my original money, combine it with theirs, and use it to wager on me winning the opening round. Since I'm a ninja and live with a lot of supervillains, obeying the law doesn't bother me as much as it once did. Sure, it was counterfeiting, underage gambling, and I was betting on myself, but will I be prohibited from being a ninja like Pete Rose was in baseball if this is ever discovered? Who made the decision to instill baseball facts in my mind? I'm losing my way. However, my clones went above and beyond. Fisk reportedly located Neji and struck up a fascinating conversation with him, and I couldn't help but smile at a new possible ally. A sophisticated voice said, now I recognize that kind of smile, as the owner moved forward. That's the smile after a well-executed plan. My namesake was kind enough to find me and show me a copy of his memories. Well done, Naruto. A performance mixing lies and twisting the truth, all done with sincerity. Your actions were worthy of the title of Kingpin, said a giant, bald man in a white suit with a black soul. Before I could carry on our conversation, I recalled what Beck and Gargan had discovered. Where are those coffins Orochimaru summoned? Thanks, Uncle Wilson. Perhaps that could be a career path for me, Kingpin of the Elemental Nations. In the cargo hold, was Fisk's response. Well then let's see what Orochimaru dug up. I responded, I discovered the 2 coffins in the hold with the rest of my recently acquired items. I carefully lifted the lids so I could see who was inside. If my memory serves me correctly, the one with the boy in it, the one that fired air blasts, looked like a doll whose parts had been taken out and put back in. His skin had some bulges, as if the bones in his body were too large for his skin, and patches of skin, particularly on his face, appeared to have been grafted on his right arm and left leg were both the size of an adult. The girl Shikamaru beat was in the other coffin, and she looked pretty much the same as she had back then, save for the fact that half of her hair was gray and spiky. Her torso appeared swollen, as if she were an overstuffed stuffed toy, and her forearms looked like they belonged on an older man. I fixed my gaze on her face, paying particular attention to the tiny metal disc on her forehead, before turning to study the disc on his. I said, what's that? Otto explained, a portable scanner, and pointed to a computer screen that displayed images of the 2 brains. Scans show that both subjects' brains are in a comatose state. What about the swapped body parts? Are they transplants? Now that is fascinating, said a fresh voice, accented in British. A man, or maybe half a man, came forward. His left side caught your eye, while his right side appeared to be typical. His left hand and foot were claws, his left eye was yellow and bigger than his right, and his entire left side was pale green and essentially hairless. Otto asked Herbert Landon, a famous geneticist who had been the target of his attempt to eradicate mutant kind, "What are you talking about, Herbert? Their genetic structures have been completely changed, but only in certain spots." In the male's case, Landon remarked as the monitors switched to a computer graphic of the area beneath the man's left shoulder. The blood flows from the heart to the arm, but when it reaches the dividing point, the white blood cells are slowed down. Its DNA is being rewritten, the monitors said, displaying a sequence of DNA fragments being broken apart and reassembled. The monitors changed once more to show a white blood cell attacking the blood vessel walls. The white blood cells and antibodies are being changed too slowly, so they are attacking the foreign cells around them and slowly destroying the blood vessels. Fortunately, both the host and whoever the grafted pieces came from shared the same blood type, but there is a problem. Everywhere a replacement part is found in the body, this is occurring. How about the girl? I inquired. Most of the body is intact except for some of her hair, her forearms, and her internal organs. Does she appear to be disintegrating? Her liver and lungs exhibit significant damage, though not to the same extent as her counterpart. If I had to guess, I would say that the organs inside her belong to an elderly man who smoked and drank a lot. How can we have this conversation? Otto inquired. Well, there aren't any signs of surgery, Landon clarified. I ran a genetic comparison, and while the teenagers aren't related, the transplanted seem to belong to close relatives, possibly brothers. Brothers? In coffins labeled 1 and 2. Why does that sound familiar? I asked aloud. Before anyone could respond, there was a loud cracking sound, and the monitors flashed red and cut to one of the brain scans, which now showed the brain exploding in color. I think I may have an answer, Smythe called from across the room as he began to walk toward us. The monitors flickered and changed again, showing the insides of the coffin and the black lines painted inside. I think this coffin is full of seals. I don't know what they do, but I hope they have something to do with it. I said, what's happening? The female is regaining consciousness, said Otto, but these scans are showing a tremendous amount of neural activity. Smythe questioned, more than 10% of the brain? Ignoring my father's explanation with his tentacles, I walked to the sleeping girl in the coffin. That is a popular misconception, Otto explained. In fact, when a person thinks, brain activity, she had the same appearance, but her closed eyes appeared to flutter a little. I said, Miss? Are you awake? Her red eyes opened, darting around before focusing on me and then narrowing.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.